Good evening, citizens, council, and staff. I call our City Council meeting for November 1st, 2016, a regular meeting to order. Clerk Hefner, could you call the roll?
Mayor Beckman.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Brinkman. Here. Councilmember Cernanik.
Present.
Councilmember Clark. Councilmember Cole.
Here.
Councilmember Hopping.
Here.
Councilmember Valdez.
Present.
Could you stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have an agenda, and it's been posted, and I'd like to proceed on that agenda unless there's any additions or comments. This brings us to item 4. If I could take a moment, I know there are people that would like to speak to the Nevada Street issue, and they're not used to council proceedings. The way we have it set up, there are 2 opportunities for the public to speak, and we asked for the first session of public comment to be in regards to issues that are not the public hearings, which we have a public hearing on the budget and the mill levy. But also we asked that the first public comment be focused on the consent agenda and general business items so that we have an order to proceed and we can try to get through it. So I'm asking that the Nevada folks wait till the second public comment. And I know that's a little bit, but we have 8 items on the consent agenda, a couple public hearings, so we'll try to move through it as we can, but we look forward to your comments. So this is the first public comment. And again, public comment's an opportunity for anyone to express opinions or to ask questions that are not part of the public hearings. There will be 2 opportunities for public comment at the beginning of the meeting regarding the consent agenda and general business items, and later in the meeting before council reports. An immediate response should not be expected. Anyone who would like to speak during either of the public comments, we ask that you sign the green form, and I have the one for the first public comment here, but I will ask to make sure that you don't miss the opportunity. And then the second public comment sheet should be in the back. We expect comments to be civil, and disrespectful behavior will not be tolerated. There's a 3-minute time limit, and I have the first person on the list to speak is Ryan Bailey. And when you address council, it's from the center there, and if you'd speak into the microphone.
So I'm addressing item I. Is that okay?
Yeah, on the consent agenda.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep. So my name is Ryan Bailey. I'm a faculty member at Colorado State University, and I have a graduate student here with me, Luke Flores, and we're working on a groundwater pumping study in South Platte Park. And we've identified this as an ideal place to assess the impact of groundwater pumping on the flow in the South Platte River to see how the aquifer and the stream interact, not only in that area, but also throughout the South Platte Park area. And we've been working with Centennial Water District. They have operation of the pumping wells, so we can have control over the pumping, and we're looking to put in monitoring wells between the pumps and the river late November, early December, have our study go through the end of March or April, and then we can remove those wells from the area. The data we're collecting will support a master's thesis from Luke Flores at CSU, and also help with courses I teach at CSU, getting some data for the classroom so students can get a kind of some real world data in their classroom instruction. So we're looking for approval to continue with that project.
Thank you.
Okay.
The next speaker is Paul Bingham.
Good evening, Council. I'm Paul Bingham, 236 West Delaware Circle. I came to talk in support of item 5H, the Riverside General Plan Development Plan. The city planning staff has recommended this. The planning board has recommended it. There's no violations, no problems, no big anything to worry about it. The zoning requirements are all met, no exceptions, parking problems, etc. It's a very rational little development of townhouses It fits in with its neighbors. Its neighbors are apartment houses and commercial areas. I would ask you to approve it, please.
Thank you, Paul. Stephanie Thomas?
And actually, we were signed up to speak about the Windermere traffic calming. Is now the time to speak about that? Okay,
Is-
and she signed up slightly ahead of me. I'm next. Do you mind if I go ahead and go first?
No, go ahead, please.
Okay, I'm Rachel Short.
Okay.
Thank you guys very much for your time. Later on, I guess kind of in the agenda, we're addressing the Windermere traffic calming and some proposals for that. Just so you guys know the history, this has been over 8 years in the making. We've presented the problem to the city on many different occasions, and they validated the problem. This is the first time we've been able to come before you guys. Just a couple bullet points on that. They have identified that the average speed limit of cars traveling either direction on Windermere south of Ridge Road is 20 to 30% greater than the speed limit. And actually, hundreds of cars per day are traveling in excess of 45 miles per hour. Many of those are actually during some high traffic times when students are going to and from school, so there's a lot of foot traffic during the excessive speed times as well. To highlight, the section of Windermere has an extreme amount of foot traffic, both on the sidewalks, a lot going back and forth to Heritage, a lot at several different bus stops, not to mention the crosswalk that Stephanie, that's speaking after me, will talk about a little bit here. Also, the other thing to keep in mind that much of Windermere is quite narrow. Actually, when you hit Windermere right off of Ridge Road, there are no sidewalks on one side, and there really isn't any excessive room, so there's not a lot of margin for error for these drivers if they're traveling in excess of the speed limit. Since the project's been in the works for as long as it is, it kind of validates the severity of the problem and the fact that we've tried to continue bringing it up to the city, and we appreciate you guys' time looking at this. Last highlight I want to make is 78% of the residents that actually have properties on Windermere that would be affected by any of the proposals we've made are in favor of this, and 100% of them who have properties that would actually touch any of the traffic circles that are going to be mentioned were in favor of such a problem. Given the fact that it's upwards of 78%, it also tells you that the people that see this on a daily basis understand the problem. We also have a number of our neighbors that do not live on Windermere here present today, just as support to show that it's not just those of us with actual properties affected by the traffic, but that they have safety concerns as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephanie?
So as Rachel had mentioned, our concerns have been ongoing, and as Littleton continues to grow and our community expands and turns over and thrives, when Heritage was put in a neighborhood, I think the thought that was many kids would walk to school, and now we have open enrollment and different things, so there are a lot more drivers going to and from school, as well as we now have cell phones, which weren't there when Heritage was first there. So we have a lot of distracted drivers. I live directly on the Lee Gulch Trail and Windermere. The drivers go really fast, and then if a driver is going the speed limit or slowing down for a bus, a lot of times they will cross over the yellow, the driver behind will cross over the yellow line into oncoming traffic to pass, or they will honk horns. Our bus driver has even stopped putting out the stop sign because drivers will pass or go around a stopped car, and we don't want people at the crosswalk to have a false sense of security to stop because the bus stop sign is out. So he has said you could contact him if you have other questions about that, but it's become very dangerous. Drivers will also slow down, and before a person is through the crosswalk, they will speed through, and that's a big concern. So along with our proposal, I would really ask that if you see that our proposal is not adequate, that we work with Tim to make it an even safer environment, as we have on some of the other roads around that we found traffic circles are not adequate for, because it's not getting, we're growing, we're a thriving community, and the traffic to and from this high school and all of our high schools is going to increase. So we would just ask that you really consider this as something to keep our community safe, our students, people visiting the trails, and the students that walk to and from and across our street every day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stephanie, which corner? Northwest?
So, yes, we're on this, the northwest side of Lee Gulch Trail.
The Irish Wolfhound?
Yeah, that's my house. He's on an electric fence.
Great dog.
That completes my list of people who've signed up to speak for this period addressing consent agenda or general business items. Was there anyone who didn't get a chance to sign up? Pam?
All you folks. A couple concerns I had on first reading. Ordinance 27 for amending the city code regarding handicaps. My concern about it is that perhaps some of these changes help us comply with federal law for names and also state law. But also there's a lawsuit, which I believe you folks had an executive session about, Casco LLC versus the City of Littleton. I want to make sure that this doesn't change any of the protections that the City of Littleton offers to residents of facilities like this. And I'm not a lawyer. I don't play one on TV. But the language here, for me, is a little thick in some places. I don't understand the clear intent of the law, and I want to, because care of these people is very important. So let me just say the part with line 36, 38, 39 has professional staff may provide 24-hour supervision and may reside. You know what? They may not. We don't address maybe professional staff at all, and maybe that's intentional, but I think we should. Oh, is the timer? Because the proposal here is for 12 residences, 12 residents, 2 caregivers during the day and 1 at night for 12 people. And to me, that's a pretty steep requirement. That may be state licensing, but to me, that's a lot, and I'm concerned. Maybe it's not a change from before, I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. So also, in the new language in 10.4.17 proposed, number 4 and number 5 do not refer to staff at all. It has maximum residents and doesn't refer to resident or non-resident staff at all. And again, I'm concerned. Maybe we need to leave that up to the state, but I want to make sure that we have adequate staffing for folks. And also, I wonder what we lose by changing the definition of living facility assisted by removing the may have some skilled nursing beds. So just wanted to mention that. And then 5H, I'm not in favor of the 56-unit proposed Riverside development because on less than 3.5 acres, this is an urban scale density development. There are units on the perimeter, but most of them are on the interior. They talk about decks as being part of the open space. The open space requirement is not adequate. It's 65% as zoned now. It's 50% in the adjacent apartments. They propose 25%. Decks are supposed to, well, not all the units have decks, so decks are not adequate for open space. The river setback, which should be important to us, is way too small and not comparable at all with Riverside. And there's more to talk about, but I hope you ask staff for more information about this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pam. Anyone else who'd like to speak to the consent agenda or general business items? I don't see anyone. This brings us to agenda item 5, the consent agenda items. We have 8 items on the consent agenda. The consent agenda may be adopted by a single motion. All ordinances must be read by title prior to a vote to the motion, and any consent agenda item may be removed at the request of a council member. Agenda item A is Resolution 55-2016. It's a resolution as the governing body of the City of Littleton for the Emergency Medical Transportation Enterprise adopting the 2017 budget.
Pull.
Agenda item B is Resolution 56-2016, a resolution as the governing body of the Littleton Sewer Utility Enterprise adopting the 2017 budget.
Pull.
Agenda item C is Resolution 57-2016. It's a resolution as the governing body of the City of Littleton Stormwater and Flood Management Utility Enterprise adopting the 2017 budget.
Pull.
Item D is ordinance 24-2016. It's an ordinance on first reading approving the modification of the term of the Master Services Agreement with Comcast Cable Communications Management, LLC, for telecommunications connectivity services.
Pull.
Agenda item E is Resolution 49-2016. It's a resolution approving the 2017 Highline Business Improvement District Operating Plan and Budget.
Pull.
Agenda item F is ordinance 20-2016. It's an ordinance on first reading adopting the 2017 fee schedule. Agenda item G is ordinance 27-2016. It's an ordinance on first reading amending Title 10 of the City Code concerning the definitions of group home for persons with handicaps, handicap and assisted living facility, and to add supplementary standards for group homes for persons with disabilities. Agenda item H is ordinance 25-2016, an ordinance on first reading approving a rezoning and an amended Riverside General Plan Development Plan located at 5,000 and a portion of 4,900 South Prince Street. Can I have a motion for the items remaining?
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of consent agenda items 5F, 5G, 5H, and 5I.
I have an error because I didn't ask for.
What about J and
I need
K?
to ask, did I miss something on my page?
IJK.
Yeah, I did, so I apologize. Apologize, we have three more items, and then we'll take the amended motion. Sorry, Phil.
You
have 8
asked.
items. Ordinance number 26-2016, an ordinance on first reading granting a temporary easement to Civil and Environmental Engineering Department, Colorado State University, for a streamlined study in the South Platte Park. Resolution 41-2016, item J, is a resolution approving a final plat of the Broadmoor 7th Filing minor subdivision.
Pull.
And item K is the certification of the October 18th, 2016 regular meeting minutes.
Pull.
Mr.
Okay,
Chairman,
now-
I move approval of agenda items, consent agenda items 5F, 5G, 5H, and 5I as before.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Prepared to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
So that brings us back to the ones that were pulled. A is Resolution 55-2016. It's the resolution as a governing body of the City of Littleton Emergency Medical Transportation Enterprise adopting the 2017 budget, pulled by Councilmember Clark.
My issue with A is also the same one with B and C, and that is, I believe the Charter, Section 38, requires us to use an ordinance to pass an appropriation, which is what these three resolutions are doing. And having said that, I realize we've done this in the past. This has been a common method of doing it. I just think that it's not appropriate to use a resolution. It's appropriate to do an ordinance. And so I'm proposing that we turn down these three resolutions and have them come back as an ordinance on first reading at the next regular meeting and then go through that process. I believe there's enough time before the end of the year. And I can read Section 38 if you want.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Assuming I brought it with me with all of this stuff. Section 38 is in the Article 5, which is entitled Ordinances. It governs how ordinances are done. And it says, when required, in addition to such acts of the council as are required by general statute or by other provisions of the charter to be by ordinance, every act making an appropriation, authorizing borrowing money, levying tax, establishing any rule or regulation for the violations of which a penalty is imposed, or in placing any burden upon or limiting the use of private property shall be by ordinance. All three of these resolutions are actually approving appropriations, because they're approving the budget for those three. They're separate Tabor enterprises. And once again, I'm not assigning any blame. We have done this in the past. This has been common. I just think that that we ought to do it the appropriate way, and now's the time to do that.
So at this point, I think it's valid to have a little further discussion, but we would need a motion and a second in order to go on with this. Do you want to clarify that into a motion?
Sure, I'll try this. I move that we turn down Resolution 55, 2016, and bring the EMT budget back as an ordinance on first reading at the next regular council meeting.
I'll second.
Hold on, I'm writing here. So we have a motion and a second, and this would apply also in discussion, I think, to A, B, and C.
Yeah.
And that's to, at this point, to turn down Resolution 55-2016 and bring it back as a first reading at a date certain, which would be the next regular council meeting. Discussion.
Yes, yeah.
Go ahead.
I'd like to hear from the attorney, your position on this, please.
Mr. Mayor and Councilmember Valdez, I'm looking at the provision of the charter right now. I was not aware that this issue was going to come up tonight, and rather than give you an off-the-top-of-my-head response, I would tell you I would need to look into this a little bit further to be comfortable in advising the council whether it's okay to proceed by resolution or whether it needs to come back in the form of an ordinance. The only reason I know it's been done like this before is because I just heard Councilmember Clark say it, and I'm assuming staff is used to that process, but I'm not in a position tonight to just give you an off-the-top-of-my-head response as to what's the right way or the wrong way to do it.
Additional discussion.
Suggestion is, rather than dictating it, come back as an ordinance. Why don't we wait until we have the attorney's research and then ask staff to come back with an appropriate approach?
You could do that. I would make the argument that there's really almost no downside to bringing it back as an ordinance. I mean, it goes through first and second reading. Even if we had the choice of doing it by resolution or by ordinance, it would probably be more appropriate to do it by ordinance. Purposes of ordinances are to provide more public notice. If you're doing appropriations and setting fees in budgets based on, or setting fees for the services provided by the Tabor Enterprise Funds, according to the budget that you approve, it seems to make sense to do it by ordinance.
Attorney's opinion on that, please.
We have Finance Director has some background, too, for us. Do you want to give him a chance there? And
Councilmember Clark was very perceptive, and I appreciate him emailing staff questions about this today. So the city clerk was able to pull up the three ordinances that created these Tabor Enterprise Funds. And it looks like the language in there could be a little more clear. It does say by resolution, council as a governing body can adopt fees and charges for these Tabor Enterprise Funds. It does not say specifically how it will adopt the budget. And I think the interpretation back then when these funds were created, that the budget would be adopted separately per resolution. And so I think it's up to council whether or not they want to make that a more strict process by ordinance, but I definitely would like the city attorney to review those ordinances that created the Tabor Enterprise Funds.
so I think it's pretty clear that staff's request of us is to have an opportunity to review this before we act on A, B, and C. And the question would be, just from the time-wise, and I'm directing the question maybe to the city manager, we do want to approve or not approve issues relating to the budget by a certain date. Does that play into the decision to carry the discussion further as a resolution, or would we want to introduce it as a resolution, as an ordinance in the future to move along?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor and Council, I think my response to this is that we would probably, as staff, since we're going to have to step back and kind of look at this, probably proceed here with changing this to an ordinance. I think that would certainly allow us enough time then to adopt these budgets here in time for the end of the year. We could, my only concern is that if we spend some time kind of reviewing the resolution approach, we'd likely could get that done quickly. I'm just not quite sure exactly how that might put us into the schedule towards the end of the year. And remember, Council, we did cancel some of our meetings here later in the year around Christmas. So again, I think if Council wants to step back with this and not approve the resolution this evening, my recommendation is we just proceed with those three as ordinances.
Any further discussion? So we have a motion and a second to basically move this forward to a date in the future, our next regular council meeting, and have it presented to us as an ordinance. And we want to do that for, I think, each of these separately. I think we have to act on each of the items separately. So for agenda item A, which is resolution 55-2016, we have a motion and a second. Are we prepared to vote?
Wait a minute, clarify what the yes and no are going to do.
Yes would turn down the resolution and instruct the staff to bring it back as an ordinance on first reading.
I thought I heard something different. Thank you.
Now, date would be December.
November 15th.
November 15th. And that allows a second reading within our time limit. Okay.
On the 6th will be the second.
Ready for a vote? Sure.
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Speed things up, can I just make that motion on B and C? And second turn, okay.
So we have a motion for B. Let's do it independently. Motion for B.
I move that we turn down the resolution 56-2016 and instruct the staff to bring back the budget and appropriation for the Littleton Sewer Utility Enterprise as a ordinance on first reading on November 15th.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Are we ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
And to C.
And I move that we turn down Resolution 57-2016 and instruct the staff to bring back an ordinance for approval of the budget and appropriation for the Stormwater and Flood Management Utility Enterprise Fund for 2017 on November 15th.
Second. Motion and a second. Ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
And just a comment on those three, I'm trying to think of the rationale for why we got to where we got to. In our budget, we're going to have to supplement each of those with budgetary items. They don't self-generate as an enterprise fund, to the best of my recollection. There's some shortfalls in each of them at some point too, and I think that makes us doing it as an ordinance a little safer also, but just a thought. Okay, this brings us to agenda item D, ordinance 24-2016. This was the ordinance on first reading approving the modification of the term of the master services agreement with Comcast Cable Communications Management, LLC, for telecommunications connectivity services. This was pulled by Councilmember Cole.
Yes. I pulled this because in section 6.1, section B, there is that item is not grammatical sentence. So I would like this to come back to us so that that is a clear sentence. And I don't, somebody wants on staff later to ask me about it, we can do that, but it is not a grammatical sentence, so I'm not totally sure what it's meaning. So what I'd like is to have it come back to us the same way that we've just moved on the others.
What sentence is it?
It's the section B under 6.1.
Give us a moment here to all catch up. See, take a
So
look
if
at
you
that.
take a second to read that, I hope you all see the,
Excuse me, if I could ask a question to Councilmember Cole. I'm not seeing, but, all right, there's multiple contracts here, and
Starts out, neither party shall be liable.
okay, I'm going to look at that, and the city manager has something that I know he wants to say.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Council, I think this is just the first reading of the ordinance. I think we certainly have time to respond to any kind of council clarification on the grammar of the ordinance. And so if by Councilmember Cole, passing that on, we certainly can make that correction in time here for the second reading.
okay, I mean, I can handle that. I hope you all can see that it's not, the sentence doesn't make sense. There's a however in there that is, something is either missing or something needs to be removed.
Yeah.
Can you see that?
Yeah, Councilmember Cole, I would tell you that this is what lawyers are fond of calling boilerplate language. I could probably look through city contracts and find fairly close to the exact same language in multiple contracts. I think the grammatical issue is that the word "that" after "however" probably doesn't need to be there. So it should say,
Well, and
however,
probably
nothing herein.
probably a semicolon needs to be in there somewhere. Take the "that" out and put a semicolon in, but whatever it needs to get sorted out or the boiler's going to blow up, so.
I will tell you the boiler will not blow up, and that any judge that this language would ever go in front of would know exactly what it means, as would the lawyers on both sides of the dispute.
Yeah, but I like the citizens to know, too.
I hear you. I hear you. I just want you to be assured that even if the language like this was adopted, it doesn't impact the city's benefits or potential liability in any way. I understand what you're saying about the
Thank you.
grammatical issue, but I want council to be assured that it's not going to impact the city's legal rights.
At this point, we don't have a motion or a second, and I think I need to move ahead with that part at least.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the ordinance on first reading to modify the term of the master services agreement with Comcast Cable Communications Management, LLC, for telecommunications connectivity services, and to schedule a public hearing for November 15, 2016 at 6:30 p.m. in the council chamber, adding to this a review by council and IT director, the language in section 6.1B.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to proceed with the ordinance on first reading as the title is included in our agenda, with the addendum that at the second reading, we'll have information from the city attorney.
Mr. Mayor, while I agree with Councilwoman Cole about the sentence, I still have an issue, and I think we should all have an issue with the indemnification that's in here. Colorado Constitution pretty clearly does not allow us to indemnify corporations. Putting to the extent the law permits clause at the front of that doesn't fix the problem, because if the law does permit it to any extent, we don't know what that extent is. According to Hayes, Phillips, Hoffman, and Carberry, and I'll point out that this was presented at a CML conference, we're apparently not covered by insurance if there is an extent that this is done. So I don't know why we would violate the Constitution and why we would assume a liability that we have no way of knowing what the amount is going to be, and we're not probably covered by either our insurance or governmental immunity. And the reason I'm doing this on first reading is so that Comcast has a chance to actually modify the agreement before it comes back to a second reading, or we can go to a different provider.
Mr. Attorney.
Councilmember Clark, Mr. Mayor, the language that you're referring to has been language that I've seen, not just in telecom, but in lots of commercial contracts. If the city is leasing any equipment right now from any financial information, I would almost guarantee you that it's in there. Councilmember Clark is correct that the Constitution prohibits the city from indemnifying against third-party damages. There are some large companies out there that will simply refuse to do business with you unless you include this kind of language. And the way that many city and county and special district attorneys throughout the state have addressed it is to preface it with the language that you see there, to the extent permitted by law. So the city's obligation to indemnify is only if the law allows it to, and as we've discussed, the Constitution doesn't allow us to. And, you know, I hate to admit this, but this is the way it is. It's one of those wink-wink kind of ways to get around an issue. You have the big corporations with their lawyers back in some city in some other part of the country and say, we can't take this language out, it has to be in there. And the city attorney or the county attorney says, we can't put it in there if it's unlimited. The only way you'll ever get it through is if we say, to the extent allowed by law, or only to the extent permitted by law, or something along those lines, and that usually suffices. So from a legal opinion standpoint, I think we're protected by the constitutional provision with this language in here. I do not think it violates the Constitution. I agree with Councilmember Clark to the extent that I'd rather not see it in there at all. I just know what the answer is going to be, whether it's Comcast or CenturyLink or any other big company that we want to buy services from.
Well, I'll point out that in the memo from Hayes, Phillips, Hoffman, and Carberry, that they're citing a court case, so having the language in there, even if we ultimately are ruled in favor of in the court, doesn't prevent us from, or encourages us from having to go to court to defend ourselves against a potential indemnification clause, and they give a specific court case that happened in 2011. There are other providers of telecommunication service. There are multiple providers of telecommunication service. Comcast does service throughout the state. The Constitution is the same everywhere in the state. I think that if Comcast wants to do business in Colorado, that they can adhere to the Colorado Constitution. And we're operating, as I understand, without a approved franchise agreement with them anyway.
That's a whole separate issue. I would disagree that we don't have a pending agreement, and I can explain why the federal law interprets it that way, but that's kind of a separate issue, so I'll leave it to the majority of the council if you want a discussion on that point.
Well, at this point, we have a motion and a second with the clarification addition from the attorney at the second reading. Councilmember Clark, do you want to, I guess, further amend? I got to decide if we have to act on that
I could
amendment.
try and amend that by going through the Amendment A, but I think that experience has shown us that amending that stuff from the podium here is fraught with error. So I would rather turn this down, have them contact Comcast, tell them to read the Constitution and bring us back a contract that actually complies with that.
You have a motion.
The motion's already on here, so I'm advocating voting no for the motion.
That would be it. So if you're in agreement with the issue that Councilmember Clark is addressing, it would be a no vote, because the motion and the second that we have now is for the ordinance as the title's listed in In the agenda, it says, "I move to approve the ordinance on first reading to modify the term of the master services agreement with Comcast Cable Communications Management LLC for telecommunications connectivity services and to schedule a public hearing for November 15th, 2016 at 6:30 PM in the council chamber with the proviso that Councilmember Cernanek added that with the clarification from the attorney." And we have a motion and a second. Are we ready to vote?
The vote is 5 in favor with Councilmember Cole and Councilmember Clark voting no. The motion carries 5-2.
This brings us to Agenda Item E, which is Resolution 49-2016. It's the resolution approving the 2017 Highline Business Improvement District Operating Plan and Budget. It was pulled by Councilmember Clark.
I'd like them or whoever wants to come down and explain the budget because I'm not understanding portions of it, please.
Councilmember Clark, City Council, Mr. Mayor. Mike Broughton, Deputy City Manager. This was generally, the city has to approve this operating plan by a certain time every year, and this year it's December 5th. This was brought forward by Special District Management Services, who manages the Highline and Business Improvement District. I do not believe anyone is here this evening from them. And given that, I would ask that this be laid over until the next meeting to discuss the budget. They were supposed to be here tonight.
Thank you. And one of the specific questions I have is what happened to, looks like the $100,000 between the ending fund balance and on page 5, the debt service fund. Looks like there's $100,000 or more difference between the ending fund balance in 2015 and the beginning fund balance in 2016. I'm assuming that $110,000 went somewhere.
15 to 16?
Yeah. And then I'm not understanding why the beginning fund balance of the 3 columns for 2016 is a different figure. But as a general thing, I think we ought to have somebody to come down here and explain the budget and what they're doing. So,
Agreed.
thank you.
Thank you.
God bless you.
So with that, would you like to make a motion?
I move that we postpone Resolution 49-2016 to November 15th.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion?
I'm sorry, who seconded?
Just to
Thank
make a specific note that we would expect someone from the district to be present.
So we have a motion and a second to postpone this to November 15. Ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
This brings us up to Agenda Item J. This one was pulled by Councilmember Clark.
Jay.
I believe so.
Sorry to be the puller of choice tonight, but I have two issues. They're both, I think, could be remedied fairly easily. The way I read it, the letter that we have, I'm sorry, this is for approving a final plat for Broadmoor 7th filing, which is the area that King Soopers is located at Littleton and Broadway. And they are dividing the property into 3 separate lots for the benefit or at the request of King Soopers. There's a letter that's dated October 9th from Regency Partners, or Regency Centers that currently own the property. It's actually almost a nonsensical letter because it authorizes King Soopers to apply for the minor subdivision plat, but it doesn't authorize them to execute any binding documents such as the final plat, and we're approving the final plat tonight. So it looks to me like that the owner or that the applicant that submitted this doesn't actually have the authorization to take it through to completion. Second issue is there's a minor error on the plat itself. in one of the notes that I think ought to be corrected. So if we're going to move forward on it tonight, I think the note on the plat ought to be corrected. I think that it's pretty simple to solve by having the Regency Centers send us a letter saying that the authorization for King Soopers and Galloway is all the way through to completion of the final plat. This was something we were sent by email. The response back is this is common, they're not authorized to sign off on the plat, but I don't know why we would approve a final plat where the people that are the applicants aren't authorized to sign the final plat. So that's my issue with this.
So before we ask for a motion in a second, I know this was addressed in an email. Maybe now would be the time to mention that.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Clark, again, I would tell you that it's not uncommon, and I'm not referring just to plats, but applications for other land use approvals of rezoning where a tenant will file for the rezoning with a letter from the property owner saying I'm giving my authority for my tenant to apply for this rezoning or amendment to a PD or whatever it might be. Usually you don't see, and they don't have the authorization to sign the final, but that's implied, so that the applicant is authorized to file the application, which means the staff and the council have the right to go forward. You vote on it. To the extent that final documents need to be signed by the owner, I read the letter as meaning the owner was simply saying, but this authorization I'm giving is limited to filing the application. I'll sign the plat when it's approved or if it's approved. So I don't think, I don't have the same concern that there's no authority to move forward with this. It's going to have to be signed by somebody on behalf of the owner, and I think the owner is simply telling you that the folks who are authorized to file the application are not authorized to sign the plat if you approve it.
And then was there clarification on what the error was on the plat itself?
On note 8, which establishes basically the easements for the parking, it actually says for the 70th filing, and this is the 7th filing. So I think it's just a typo, but it's something that ought to be corrected on the plat.
Can I get a motion?
I'll move that that the resolution approving final plat for the Broadmoor 7th filing minor subdivision be postponed to November 15th.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to postpone this resolution approving the final plat for the Broadmoor 7th filing minor subdivision to November 15th. Do we have any more discussion? Jerry?
Yeah, I think as our acting city attorney mentioned, that it's not uncommon for the owners of a property to have the user of the property represent them on a specific case, and I think that's what this is. The Planning Commission deals with that kind of stuff every time, so I don't have an issue with the way it's worded.
I mean, I'll say, sorry, go ahead, Phil.
Let me recognize Phil, and then Phil.
Yeah, what I'd rather see is that we correct the plat itself from 70th
Yeah.
to 7th, and that we move ahead with this, because I'll also agree with Councilmember Valdez that having the application come from a tenant with the authorization of the property owner is not that unusual. And it's very clear in the letter from Regency that they're reserving the right to make the signature as the property owners, and that would occur.
Do you want to make a motion?
So
Motion on the floor.
we have a motion on the floor.
Just saying what I'd rather see.
But we don't have do we have a motion and a second at this point? We have
Motion and a second, yes.
Just to postpone it.
Just to
just to
postpone.
postpone it. So should we act on need a little help on figuring out the clarity of this, because we have a request for two changes, of which one change is different than the other. One is simply resolved, and the other involves, I think, a significant process issue.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
To clarify the process, because you have a motion and a second to postpone, if you agree with Councilmember Clark's motion, you vote yes. If you don't, if you agree with the suggestion by Councilmember Cernanek, you vote no, and then make a motion to approve with instructions to staff to correct the typo.
Sounds good.
Or can I advocate for voting yes, having them come back on the 15th with a corrected plat and with a letter saying that they're authorized? Because frankly, if they hadn't put the sentence in there specifically saying they weren't authorized to execute any binding and on specifically the final plat, I wouldn't have a concern with it. But when they specifically say they're not authorized for final plat and that's what we're proving, that's what my issue is.
Okay, I've got to go back to what the city attorney suggested then. It's the motion, it is on the floor and seconded to postpone to November 15th. If you vote no on this, Ken, help me out, you vote no on this, then we bring it back to the original motion to act on.
Correct.
Okay. Are you ready to vote?
Oh, sorry.
The vote is 1 in favor, with the rest of council voting no. The motion fails 1-6.
So I'd be looking for a motion and a second.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the resolution approving the final plat for the Broadmoor 7th filing minor subdivision, with a note that the typo gets changed to 7th rather than 70th.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are we ready to vote?
The vote is 6 in favor, with Councilmember Clark voting no. The motion carries 6-1.
Brings us to agenda item K, which was ID 16-259, which was the certification of the October 18th, 2016 regular meeting minutes, pulled by Councilmember Clark.
I move to approve, based on the city clerk certification, the October 18, 2016 video as the minutes for the October 18, 2016 regular meeting of the City Council.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for certification of the October 18th, 2016 regular meeting minutes. Ready to vote?
The vote is 6 in favor, with Councilmember Clark voting no. The motion carries 6-1. I was trying.
Close. Really close.
Okay. So we'll take a deep breath. We move on with the agenda item 6, which are ordinances for second reading and public hearing. We have two items, item A and item B. Each will require a separate public hearing opportunity. These are items that relate to the passing of the budget and the mill levy. So we're going to go one at a time. Ordinance 21-2016 is an ordinance on second reading to be known as the Annual Appropriation Bill, adopting the annual budget for all municipal purposes of the City of Littleton, counties of Arapahoe, Douglas, and Jefferson, State of Colorado for the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2017 and ending December 31st, 2017. And we need to have a presentation from staff and our finance director.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Doug Farman, Finance Director. It's a very exciting evening, I think, for staff and the City Council. We're going to ask Council to adopt the...
Can we vote on that? Yeah. After extensive debate. Exactly.
Find it?
Yeah, it's not up on the screen yet.
Can you please turn? Never mind.
Before we start, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the process, because staff does start the process in May. We develop a work plan and try to align the next year's budget, align that with the council goals and work objectives. So that work starts in May. and continues on in June and July, where each department is going through their budgets and their proposals. And we discuss these budgets and proposals with the city manager along with every department in the city. There are 15 departments. And through June and July and August, we are working on the general fund, operating fund, along with the other operating funds. And this really goes hand in hand with the capital projects fund too, I think, as far as city council understands. A lot of what the operating fund and the general fund is able to develop as far as any type of net surplus has gone to the capital projects fund toward the maintenance and replacement projects and capital project needs of the city. And then we also look at the 5-year projections, financial projections for the main fund, which is the general fund, and then the capital projects fund, just to make sure that the next year's budget proposal is sustainable when we present it to the city council. And then city council reviews the budget. This year we did review the budget in September with city council over a 3-night period. And council reviewed the line items as well as the 21 policy questions that really highlighted the policy questions from staff. And so you can see everybody is cheering here. As we get to this public hearing tonight, we're all very excited. Just some of the budget highlights, and I'll be very brief here. 2017 City Council has proposed making a significant investment into some of the large street maintenance needs throughout the city, and there will also be major investments into park improvements. In 2017, after careful consideration, Council also has authorized 7.25 full-time employees. And you can see here the Council has approved 4 additional patrol officers, along with some additional fire personnel. And just a footnote on the fire personnel, those are shared costs with the 2 special districts that we have fire contracts with. So the city shares approximately 28% of those costs. We had a few proposed budget changes after council reviewed the budget. We did ask the council, staff's recommendation was to add 500,000 additional street projects, and those are included in the $3.45 million shown on the previous slide for street capital needs, traffic signal needs, and sidewalk needs. And the other changes are highlighted in the council communication tonight. There were some other minor differences and corrections. And I did want to footnote, there are 15 departments in the general fund for the city, and 6 of those departments actually came in with a budget reduction from 2016 to 2017. So I think that is a significant process. That's 40% of the departments. So just did not want to overlook that fact. And I'd be able to answer any questions council had before the public hearing.
You want to list the 6 good departments
Yes.
that came in below budget?
We have economic development. We have the finance department. We have the city manager. We have the city council. And I will have to look up the other couple.
HR.
Was HR one of them?
I think so.
Was that 4?
5.
Communications. I think it was Kelly's.
Communications and marketing, and the city attorney.
Oh, so there was that.
They're all right up front on
Thank you, Doug.
the general fund.
Any other questions for Doug? Councilmember Cernanik.
Doug, one of the things that we did talk about is reviewing the status relative to the budget and to do that in a timely basis during the year. So if we needed to make some adjustments or such, we would have the opportunity to do that. And we talked about something close to the end of as close as possible to the end of the first quarter, so we'd be able to take a look at actual, both with regard revenue and expenses at that point in time. So I wanted to make that as a note as we go through this, that it's not put it on the shelf and forget about it and review it next September, but we actually are talking about an active process.
Definitely, definitely. Yes, we'll make that happen. It has been council's directive.
Additional questions for the finance director?
The $120,000 that's in there for the 2017 sales tax increment disbursement to...
That's correct.
...to Lyft, is that sufficient to cover the sales tax increment for King Soopers?
There is no sales tax increment to Lyft as far as King Soopers. The city has a separate incentive agreement that is with the city and King Soopers. So, and that's a good question. The way we have calculated the sales tax increment for Lyft is, since King Soopers obviously is in the area, I think it's the North Broadway area. It's either that one or the Littleton Boulevard, but I think it's North Broadway. It has been included in the base calculation. It was only open for a couple months in that time frame. But then, because the city has a separate sales tax incentive agreement, we have not included that in the collection period, and we will not include that in the tax increment collection periods until at such time that the sales tax incentive agreement expires, which is approximately 5 years from now. So the city staff did talk to our counselor, our attorney on that on 2 separate occasions, and that's been the direction.
Okay, so the answer is it's not in there.
The King Soopers is not part of the tax increment.
Okay.
No. And then we will be coming back with the final piece of that for a budget amendment. I think we talked to the city council with that. You will see that when we propose a budget amendment ordinance at the end of this year, and that sales tax increment will be part of that for 2016. Not the King Soopers.
2016 for 2015 taxes?
Yes, that's true.
Are we doing it for both years?
It's going to be for both years because we will end up accruing that liability, so we will actually have the 2015 and 2016 that we will end up recording in 2016 in the financial statements. One of the urban renewal areas, Columbine, actually was not ratified until January, so that piece at the end of January 2017, that one will not be booked back into 2016 since that period carries over into 2017. So there's only 2 out of the 3 sales tax increment urban renewal areas that will be in 2016.
Okay, this is kind of off the 2017 budget, but it's germane to the TIF for Lyft because, so the money was accumulated in 2015 and in 2016, but you want to disperse it simply from the 2016 budget.
Yes, unfortunately, we did not have those amounts identified in order to record those in 2015. We have a 60-day recording period for January and February. We did not identify those amounts until later in the year, so those did not get recorded into 2015. So 2016 we'll have the 2015 and 2016 amounts. And we'll have a little bit more details for the budget amendment, but for 2017, yes, that is for the 3 periods if they move forward going into 2017.
Okay.
Additional questions for Doug? Thank you, Doug. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
This time I want to open the public hearing. It's 7:34. This is the public hearing for Ordinance 21-2016. I have no one on the sign-up list. And I don't see anybody who wishes to appear. So I'll close it at 7:34 in a few additional seconds. At this point, I'm looking for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move to adopt on second reading the ordinance to be known as the Annual Appropriation Bill, adopting the annual budget for all municipal purposes of the City of Littleton, counties of Arapahoe, Douglas, and Jefferson, State of Colorado, for the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2017, and ending December 31, 2017.
Second. I have a motion and a second. Is there additional discussion? Mayor Pro Tem.
Just a couple quick comments. One of the highlights that Mr. Farman showed us was the expenditure on improvements within the community regarding parks and playgrounds. That is not general fund money. That is money that is specifically designated by a tax that the citizens have voted twice to tax themselves to Arapahoe County. That open space money is specifically designated for items that are related to parks and trails within the community, very strict, rigid guidelines for those. So we had an opportunity to be able to support some of our local parks and playgrounds with that this year. There's also within the budget that was not discussed during budget under the Open Space Fund, we received a request from the group you sit on.
Urban drainage.
Urban drainage, sorry. Urban drainage and flood control. They're working with the Army Corps of Engineers on permitting for us to be able to add some recreational amenities close to and into the river. And so we've had a couple of those that are projects that we've actually approved that are kind of sitting there in a place of limbo waiting for that. And so through the South Platte Working Group and some other partnerships, the Corps or the Urban Drainage Group came and asked us for an additional $50,000 to help push their efforts through on getting some of this permitting. So that's an additional, it also came out of the Open Space Fund. So just wanted to kind of make those two notes.
Additional comments?
I'm going to make a
Councilmember
comment.
Clark.
The reason I think it's important to get the tax increment put in as an expenditure in the budget is, first of all, we're required to have an appropriation before we spend the money. But the second thing is I think we need to have visibility to how much urban renewal is costing us. And frankly, I don't know how we can simply exclude the sales tax for one store or one shopping center that's in an urban renewal area when it was created in the plan. The plan was passed after the tax shareback agreement. There's no mention made of a conflict or the exclusion of King Soopers. If it was the intent of the city to exclude King Soopers from having sales tax increment collected from it, it should have excluded King Soopers from being included in the urban renewal plan because, as we all know, the entire shopping center was rebuilt. So the only purpose for having King Soopers in the urban renewal plan would be to collect the sales tax from that development that then would be used, and property tax would then be used on other projects. So the council could have excluded it. If there was a conflict, it could have been brought to the council. If the attorneys had an issue with the conflict between the sales tax shareback with King Soopers and the urban renewal creation of the district and the layering on top of the collection of tax increment, they should have brought it to the council's attention at the time the plan was passed. And frankly, if they see a conflict now, and I don't, in reading both documents, they should come back to the council and ask for a resolution on that, rather than simply deciding that they're not going to follow the law. Part of the issue is we're looking at least $120,000, and I think the figure is higher because we're excluding part of the money that we should be giving to LIFT, and that's just for 1 year. So the idea that's being put forth by, for instance, board members of LIFT that say that there's no encumbrance to the city by having an urban renewal authority is clearly false because we can see the figures, or should, once we get all of the budgets amended. The idea that this isn't costing us or any of the taxing entities any dollars or revenue because the increment is only generated by urban renewal projects is obviously false because we have 3 years of increment and we have no urban renewal projects at all. So the fact that this money is being diverted to LIFT obviously means it's costing the taxpayers money, and it's coming directly out of money that should be going into the city budget that we could use to finance roads and other ideas or other projects. So I'm going to vote no for the budget because I want a full accounting of urban renewal and I want a correct figure in for the amount of money that we're potentially liable for 2017. And I hope we get the right figure for 2015 and 2016. And frankly, that's an issue for the attorneys and the council. I don't mean to be pushing this off onto the finance department.
Additional comments, Jerry?
Mr. Foreman, if you could come back, please. You had mentioned that it was determined that King Soopers did not qualify for whatever period of time, the 5 more years left, I guess, so it's been about 8 years. Can you send us that information on who made that determination and their basis for that?
Sure, we can give you more
Yeah, 'cause
information.
that's the first I've heard of that they're excluded from having to pay that to urban renewal.
It's not King Soopers that's excluded, it's the city that's not
I
taking the
understand,
sales. Okay.
but I'm just trying to make it just clear here.
I'm
Yeah,
trying
the
not to get it on King
city has already shared, per the agreement, we've shared some of the extra sales taxes, the incremental sales taxes. By the new King Soopers development, there was additional sales taxes compared to the base that was determined by the sales tax incentive agreement with King Soopers.
I'm well aware of that. What I'm asking you for is the legal opinion that justifies that we are allowed to do that, to hold off on paying urban renewal as long as that agreement with King Soopers is still in effect.
Sure, we will
Thanks.
get all those
Appreciate it.
details to council.
Comment.
Do we also have one for Breckenridge? I'm sorry. Do we also have one for Breckenridge too?
Yeah.
We do. Would you like the details on that one?
And an agreement with urban renewal that they will not receive certain funds?
Breckenridge
They are
doesn't
not
have
in the
sales tax.
urban renewal area, I do
urban
not
renewal
believe, because
Okay.
Santa Fe is not in the sales tax portion of
Thank you.
that.
Sorry.
Okay. Additional comments, any down here? Okay, back to you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Well, I do intend to vote support of this budget, and I think that it was, without a doubt, another incredible job by staff. It's a lot of work that goes into this, and I think that recognizing that we are in a situation where our income levels are rising, are not rising as fast as our expenses are, and so we have to be very conservative. And I think we are looking down the road at making some very serious decisions about how we right the ship, because without a doubt, when you look at these numbers, the trajectory of it shows that we have to make some shifting and some changing, both on expenses and perhaps also on, or perhaps on expenses, but most certainly on income. And I also think that it's very important for the public to recognize that the increases in budget that the council approved, and while some of them were substantial, they went to the 3 core services that the government should provide a community, and that is your police, your fire, and your roads. And we recognize the importance of those entities, and I think that in a tight budget year, we were able to understand the importance of serving that. I think that bringing the urban renewal issue into this is confusing the matter. We have a public hearing which will be dealing with urban renewal and all of its various form, shapes, issues, concerns, loves and hates on December 6th. So in my opinion, this budget was a very good budget for what we have at the time that we have it, and I think that the staff did an incredible job, and thank you very much, and I will be supporting this budget.
Councilmember Cernanek.
Yes, and I want to appreciate the multitude of the departments that were involved in setting the budget, and also council that as the budget stands, it maintains some of our flexibility going to the future. It is a short kick of a can for 2017 discussions and how we deal with the infrastructure issues, and I look forward to those discussions as well as the ongoing budget expenditure revenue process through 2017.
Any additional comments? Councilmember Cole?
No, I think that's okay.
Okay. Okay, with that, we have a motion and a second, and the motion is to approve the ordinance on second reading known as the annual appropriation bill adopting the annual budget for all municipal purposes of the city of Littleton, counties of Arapahoe, Douglas, and Jefferson, state of Colorado for the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2017, ending December 31st, 2017, and I have a motion and a second. Ready to vote?
The vote is 6 in favor, with Councilmember Clark voting no. The motion carries 6-1.
And I'd like to thank the interim city manager and the executive staff for all the work that they did on that budget and for the presentation that they made for us. It was very informative. I think it was something that was It was conversational. It was very helpful. Our questions were answered, discussions were had, and I think, don't expect that the citizens watched all 3 days of it, but it was very significant, and it's a major part of what council does, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and members of council, and on behalf of all of staff, I certainly want to thank you for the opportunity to present that budget. I would agree it was a pretty in-depth conversation. I think we should be very proud of what we're going to be able to accomplish next year. We do have some tough issues, but for 2017, again, I think we should be very proud.
This brings us to agenda item B, which is ordinance 22-2016. It's an ordinance on second reading establishing the tax levy of 6.662 mils to defray the costs of municipal government of the city of Littleton, counties of Arapahoe, Douglas, and Jefferson, state of Colorado, for the city's fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2017 and ending December 31st, 2017. Do we have a staff member that wants to make any additional presentation?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief. The cities, we got an update on the city's assessed values, and it looks like they're only increasing 1.8% for collection next year, and that's after 15.7% for collection in 2016. So quite a dramatic change there. I just wanted to footnote that, and then, of course, there has been no levy change since 1991. It's stood at 6.662 for the city.
Thank you. Any questions for the finance director? Thank you, Doug. We require a public hearing for this. I'll open the public hearing at 7:47. I don't have anybody on the sign-in sheet. See anybody who's interested in addressing this. So at 7:47, I'll close the public hearing. Can I get a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move to adopt on second reading the ordinance establishing the tax levy of 6.62 mils to defray the costs of municipal government of the city of Littleton, counties of Arapahoe, Douglas, and Jefferson, state of Colorado, in the city's fiscal year beginning January 1, 2017 and ending December 31, 2017.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Cernanek.
Just a comment relative to Finance Director's comment about the 1.8 after the 15.7. Not looking for you to get up, but what happens is there's a property value reassessment that generally occurs every other year, and the 15.7% increase came after that major reassessment, which came after kind of a depressed environment, and that's why the 15.7. The 1.8 includes properties that have been revalued due to development, and that's the primary base for that, and of which we may see some additional items come up later now that we're having additional properties be developed. So it's kind of an every other year bump that tends to happen. So not unusual, but I did want to share that. And I appreciate that it's a number that has stood for a long period of time, and we're not looking to change it at the moment.
Additional comments? Are we ready to vote?
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, we got maybe a quick correction here we want to note.
I don't know if, I think Phil made the motion, but the mill levy would be 6.662?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that was the motion.
Yep.
It
Okay.
sounded like 6.62.
Since I have the opportunity to, I'll read it again. This is
6.662 is what I thought I might have said.
This will be an
Those
ordinance.
sixes kind of together.
This will be an ordinance on second reading establishing the tax levy of 6.662 mils to defray the costs of municipal government of the city of Littleton, counties of Arapahoe, Douglas, and Jefferson, state of Colorado, for the city's fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2017 and ending December 31st, 2017. We have a motion and a second ready to vote.
Vote is 7 in favor. The motion is unanimous.
That again?
All right.
Okay, this brings us to agenda item number 7, and what I was thinking, we'd have maybe a break after that, short break, because we'll be at it for some period of time. Agenda item 7 is a general business item with agenda item A, ID 16-256, and this is a discussion of the Windermere Street traffic calming. Do I have a staff member who would like to present this?
Good evening, Mayor and
Hi.
council members. Aaron Human, the Transportation Engineering Manager. If you just give me a second, bring this up. So I'd like to present this evening on the Windermere Street traffic calming proposal. Just to give you a little background on the process first, a resident brings a request to staff for traffic calming in a neighborhood, and we go through the neighborhood traffic management program, which I'll get into in just a minute. Staff makes a recommendation based on that process and brings that to City Council as we are tonight. And if approved, then we look for identifying where the funding will come from, implementing the project, and eventually agreeing on maintenance with the neighborhood. So this particular location is along Windermere Street, just south of Ridge Road. There are 2 locations we're looking at for traffic calming. One is at South Ridge Way intersection with Windermere, and the other one is at Davies Avenue along Windermere Street. Just to point out, in between these 2 is the Lee Gulch trail crossing, and Windermere Street is one of the primary accesses to the Heritage High School, which is used every day, weekday at least. Just a little background on the process we go through with the neighborhood traffic management program. There's 3 stages that we follow typically in this program if required. The first one is always to start with education. We try to make users of the area aware of any wrongdoing they have. In this case, we put out a speed control sign to let them know what their speeds are driving on Windermere. If you're familiar with the area, as you go south on Windermere from Ridge Road, it's a fairly steep hill and it's easy to pick up a lot of speed. So we put that traffic signal up there to try and help people be aware of how fast they're going. And we also reviewed the traffic signs and markings out there to make sure everything was clear and visible, there wasn't any blocking. When we found that the education wasn't enough, we contacted the police department to do enforcement. We alerted them to the complaints of speeding in the area, and they did go out and do some enforcing. In the case of when these 2 stages are considered not enough, which is true in this case, staff takes it upon ourselves to do some engineering study of the situation to evaluate whether there's something more we can do. In this case, in order for it to go to the engineering process, there's several conditions that we have to meet according to the neighborhood traffic management program. The first is that we only put calming along local and collector streets. So these are our lower level and typically lower volume streets. It requires that 100% of the immediate adjacent residents are in agreement with the traffic calming that's being proposed. In this case, that would be the properties that are immediately next to where the traffic calming locations are. So again, at Davies Avenue and Southbridge Way. And then we also require that at least a minimum of 75% of the neighbors in the area are in acceptance. And in this case, that neighborhood was considered residents that immediately abut to Windermere Street, as they would be the ones most directly affected by any traffic control devices being put in. The other 2 conditions are that 30% of the vehicles exceed 5 miles an hour greater than the speed limit, in which this case it's signed as 30 miles per hour along Windermere Street. And the last one is that the roadway traffic volume be between 500 and 3,000 vehicles per day.
Could you comment on that last item? That's a huge difference.
Between 500 and 3,000?
Yeah.
I mean, another way to look at it is under 3,000. Kind of the point of it is, if it's such a low volume road, under 500 a day.
No, but between 500 and 3,000, are you saying that they get up to 3,000 a day on that street?
Yes. No, I'm not talking about specifically Windermere right now. I'm talking about the conditions of the neighborhood traffic management program.
This is just the criteria that it takes.
This is the, yes, exactly. Thank you.
Oh, okay, so we can ignore the 3,000, it's got to be, anyway, it's okay.
No, I'll get into the specifics of this
So-
particular case in just a
I
second.
thought that
so.
was pretty impressive, so.
So the engineering study that we initiated first always starts with, like I said, resident support. And I'd like to point out that there are several of the residents from the neighborhood here tonight in attendance to support this. The petition was actually initiated back in 2009. It did not come in front of City Council, is my understanding, because they did not have 100% of adjacent residents in support at that time. It was updated recently this year in 2016 because they do have 100% of the adjacent residents in support of the traffic calming measures. And of the neighbors that were polled, 78% are in support. So that's, again, you see the map on the side kind of indicates the green is those that are in support of this traffic calming, and the red indicates those that were not in support of it. The data that was collected along Windermere, first, the volumes. They are approximately 3,500 vehicles per day. So I don't know if Commissioner Cole, if that's what you're asking specifically about, but that's the count along Windermere. The 85th percentile speeds were found to be 36 miles per hour along Windermere Street. And just to point out, the land use in the area is all residential, with the exception of a couple of churches in the area. But the Lee Gulch crossing, I want to point out again, is right there in the middle of where we're proposing this traffic calming. And this, again, is a major access for Heritage High School.
So with the 3,500 vehicles, is that average, weekday, what? Because with that church out there, they get 1 million just on Sunday. I'm teasing, but that's a pretty significant attendance church, I think.
But without other traffic on that day, it's pretty consistent. So this is about an average, the 3,500 on a weekday. We didn't count it on a weekend also.
Okay, thank you.
So the issues assessment that we went through as staff, Windermere Street is designated as a collector roadway, so that adheres to the requirements in the neighborhood management program. As I mentioned, the volumes do exceed 3,000 vehicles per day, which is outside the limit of what we typically would consider. But in this case, we felt like the roadway itself performs like a collector street under 3,000 because a lot of that traffic is concentrated in a very small amount of time relative to the Heritage High School. The speeds that were measured out there, we came up with 31% are actually at 35 miles per hour or greater. So again, that adheres to the requirement of 30% or more being 5 miles an hour or greater over the speed limit. So the design solution that we came up with was traffic circles with median bump outs, similar to the one that you see to the right there. That actually is an existing traffic circle that's on Gallup. There are 9 existing locations within the city similar to this. And they're spread out throughout the city, but a majority of them are in this general neighborhood. So this will include not only a traffic circle in the middle, but also has the bump outs, which kind of deflect traffic to force them to slow down to go around the traffic circle. It includes signing in advance to warn people of the circle coming up, and then also has some striping to guide them. And then typically we landscape the traffic circle in the middle. The cost estimate that we have to put in each of the locations is $20,000, so for a total of $40,000 for this project. So if council decides to approve this, what we'd be looking at right now is to identify where funding would come from. There is no specific traffic calming budget that we have identified, although in the capital projects 2016 street repair or bridge repair, we have at least $40,000 that's not obligated right now for 2016 and don't expect to be. So we feel like we can find the money in one of those 2 locations. The proposal would be to design and bid this out yet this year in 2016, but probably most likely install it sometime early in 2017 when the weather's good enough. So that was my presentation for the night, and I open up to questions.
Questions from council, Mayor Pro Tem.
I have 3 questions. One's kind of combined with another. so often with these types of situations, one of the unintended consequences is what happens to our emergency vehicles when they're coming to to the aid of a neighbor, and they have to negotiate a calming circle. Our large fire trucks, use ladder trucks, our ambulances, and even our police. I've heard from both departments that these present problems, and in some places in Littleton, they literally cannot get through them. They have to go around a different way. Have you passed this plan past both the fire and the police, and are they okay with this?
We haven't talked to them specifically about this proposal, but every time we do the design of a circle, we take fire out there to actually measure what the vehicles can go around before we put anything in the ground. We also typically do that with school buses, because school buses use these routes also. If it's designed very similar to the other ones that are in place, the vehicles are able to negotiate around each of those.
And then the other question is there a reason why you decided to do 2 along here and not 1? And then part 2 of that question is, would there be a value in doing 1 now, judging the effectiveness of that, and if we're not seeing enough effectiveness, then doing the second one?
I honestly can't tell you why 2 were considered. This predates me, but because of the locations we've identified, it's a very steep hill there, so we've identified the 2 level locations in the area in order to place these devices. They don't work very good if they're on a slope, so that's why Southbridge Way and Davies. I think we feel like it's such a long stretch without any other control in this roadway, and because of the severity of the speeding in the area and the lack of sidewalks, that we want to make sure that it's safe for all the users. There's a lot of pedestrians, bicyclists that use this, both kids and adults going to the school and to work in the area. So we felt it warranted both.
Sorry, I have one more last question. Is there a reason stop signs weren't considered?
Stop signs wouldn't be warranted based on the volumes of the side streets. So we have 2-way stops already, and it is warranted for 2-way stops, but not for all-way stops, which is the option I assume you're talking about.
Additional questions? Councilmember Cernanek?
From your experience and any other research that might be out there, Aaron, you place the 2 in. How successful are they going to be?
Regarding
What's the likelihood?
To address speeds, you mean? I think they will be very successful. The ones that we've put in the past, along Eladi, especially around the schools there, have helped lower the speeds in that area. It serves as not just to controlling speed, but kind of a reminder that it's a shared use area, that it's not just about vehicles. Yes, we want flow through the area. We don't want to necessarily stop all the vehicles, but we want a reminder that they're sharing the roadway with other users. So I think these circles are a good low-cost alternative to address the problem out there.
Okay. And then second question is, in consideration of the bikes having navigated multiple times, innumerable times, the facilities on Eladi, it actually makes it so narrow that the bicyclists tend to move into the road rather than what's been provided as far as the bike lane. Is there any design change, or are these looking to be exactly like the ones on Eladi?
Unfortunately, I wasn't around for any of the other designs. We do intend to design this one from scratch. In other words, we're not just going to plop down the other designs that were done previously. So we certainly could look at that as an option. I understand what you're saying. It's primarily for drainage on the outside there, but we certainly could look at widening it out so that it can also serve as a route alternative for bicyclists.
And I appreciate taking a look at this, having been associated with it for at least 7 years, maybe not all of the 8.
Additional comments? Councilmember Cole?
So have you been out to spy on some of the existing ones, for example, at Cayley Place and Cayley Avenue and Spotswood?
I'm not sure what you mean by spy on them.
Well,
You mean watch the operation?
to see what the cars actually do. Since I live not even a half a block from that one, and I frequently walk, I get to see what actually happens there. One of the things is, if somebody's going to turn left, they don't go around counterclockwise, they turn left into the oncoming lane and then, of course, move over. It's amazing how many people do that. Then we have, and I think the acting city manager is having this taken care of, there's a huge gouge in the cement that's with the brick, the bricks on top and the cement bumpers on the corners. I'm not quite sure how that one happened, if that was an excited car or the snowplow or what. But when that happens, it doesn't make the neighborhood look very attractive at all. I mean, property values go down the tank, right? I'm teasing, but I mean, it's not a good thing. But I'm just wondering if they really are functioning as well as people think they will. And I'm thinking, based on some of the traffic that I think drives to school on South Spotswood up to Ridge Road, that there are going to be maybe a significant number of drivers seeing how fast they can negotiate those, which, I mean, like a challenge. So I'm a little concerned whether we're just putting in something that might cause more problems rather than maybe trying for a while having more police presence out there and seeing how that potentially might calm things down.
Well, I mean, we did try that approach with the police. We did have them man it for a while. I can't speak for them how often they can be out there and what they can do differently. I know they're spread thin around the city to address many areas like this. So this is our attempt to kind of help them out a little bit by calming traffic in areas where we think it's really needed. With regard to your question about will people try and negotiate quickly, they might try, but if we design it correctly, they won't be able to. That's also true of the speed humps that are in other areas. I mean, if they so choose to drive fast over them, there's nothing we can do about that. They might damage their cars, but that's kind of their choice. It doesn't mean that enforcement can't still be present out there at times to make sure vehicles are abiding by, the speed limits and how they're supposed to negotiate around the circles. We're not as concerned about the left turns in front of the circles as we are the people going through. At these particular locations, there are not that many people turning left at those two streets because they're fairly low volume side streets. So it's more about calming the traffic along Windermere itself.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
I'll make a motion and then I'll make a comment if you're ready.
See if anybody else has any.
Motion?
Yeah, would you?
I move to approve the installation of traffic circles on Windermere Street at South Ridge Way and at Davies Avenue.
I'm sorry, could you read it one more time? I couldn't quite hear what you said.
I move to approve the installation of traffic circles on Windermere Street at South Ridge Way and at Davies Avenue.
Second.
Okay. Absolutely.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Additional discussion.
Couple more questions. Is there any kind of history of accident reports along there? Is that part of what we're dealing with? There's been a number of accidents, any injuries?
Not at that particular location, but along the length of Windermere, yes, there's been a history of some accidents along there. And it concerns the adjacent neighbors because there have been some off-road vehicles that have hit mailboxes and other properties.
This is also the location that Johnny Nicolette died skitching.
Sorry, say that again?
That was the skateboarder that died.
Oh.
I
think that's a little further.
And I think it's a little different.
Questions?
Were there other options that were considered? I know we have the calming circles around town, but there are a number of other options that can be used to help calm. Did you look at other options, and were they all eliminated for the calming? And if so, Why?
There's a variety of different options we consider for any traffic calming location. Because of the steepness of the hill and how we felt it made the most sense to consolidate at actual intersections, traffic circles seem to be the most appropriate application in this case. Other applications like speed humps, we don't feel like are appropriate along this stretch of roadway, mainly because of the grade. I don't think it's as a safe condition or would have had as much effectiveness. I think also with the traffic calming, it gives a little ownership to the neighborhoods. Certainly with whatever landscaping you put in the center, it kind of gives a little beautification to the area and kind of gives them ownership to maintain it and take care of it.
Last question then. You mentioned that there were enforcement activities. Do you have any report on that? How long were they out there? How many days? How many tickets?
I don't.
Additional comments? Bill?
And I'd like to commend you on the length of this research and the thoroughness and also the neighborhood for getting involved. But when you did the average daily counts and the speeding incidences, was there any attempt to isolate that to time of day? In other words, is most of that speeding coming during the high school hours, or is it prevalent all day long? What's the breakout of that?
We do it throughout the whole day, so it does give us that kind of data. Honestly, from what I can remember, I don't have it in front of me now, that it did occur throughout the day. It wasn't just isolated to the high school students, which would be the normal thought. And again, what it comes back to is that hill. I mean, I drive all the time too, and you don't even realize it. You don't even have to have your foot on the gas, and it doesn't take much to find yourself traveling 35 miles an hour down that hill. So I think visible traffic calming within the roadway will be a constant reminder to people to stay under control and to keep your speeds down.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions? Councilmember Cole again.
Yeah, so I have a question, because I have gone walking when we've had exciting snow and packed streets and whatever, and I've gone walking out there. Sometimes just walking on that is really exciting. So you've mentioned the steepness, particularly of that initial section off of Ridge Road. Is that going to potentially make that a bumper deterrent?
I hope not. There's always the possibility. We will work with our Public Works Department to make sure that we maintain that section during icy and snow conditions the best we can.
It is a bus route, so it's...
Right.
Is what?
It's a bus route, so it receives some pretty high
Phil,
attention.
let's let him answer, please.
But we're also a little concerned about the drop-off on the west side of the street, so we want to kind of take a look at that as a part of this design, especially up by South Ridge where it's a little steeper, to see if we can't do something to make it a little safer in general for vehicles driving around that corner. So we're hoping with this design, it'll make people aware to start off slower, not get any speed going where they could get out of control, especially in adverse conditions, and also kind of hopefully introduce some elements to it that'll make it safer in general for people to negotiate through that intersection.
Thank you.
Councilmember Clark.
Who seconded this?
Bill.
Oh, Phil, okay. Mike, traffic in the neighborhoods, volume and speed has been the #1 concern of the neighbors in basically every single neighborhood meeting that the councils have gone to that I've been aware of, and that's from the mid-'90s. It's always a concern for the neighborhoods. Traffic calming has been an issue the city has struggled with since the '90s. It's highly controversial. When I go to door, the people that don't live next to the traffic circles hate them. The people that live next to the traffic circles love them. They are effective. We did do a study at one point in time on Cayley and what happened to the speeds before and after the traffic circles, and they do reduce the speeds. I think that, for me, keeping the neighborhoods livable and addressing the issues that the neighbors have with traffic volume and traffic speed is an important priority of the council. And I even voted for the gate on Blue Sage in Beaumar South, which is highly unusual, but I think it helped address some of the issues. So I'm in favor of putting traffic circles. I'd frankly much rather go around a traffic circle than I would over a speed bump. I can remember the years of controversy and hassles we had on Fremont, and those of you that have been here a while might remember Elwood Johnson coming down to almost every council meeting and talking about the Fremont Freeway. And the first speed bump wasn't steep enough, and I got a call from a former council member about him bottoming out his Cadillac on the speed bump, which he didn't like. But they do work. And I think that they're unfortunately necessary to control traffic issues around the neighborhoods and keep them safe and desirable. So I'm in favor of these 2 traffic circles. I wish we didn't have to do it, but since we do, I think we ought to.
Councilmember Valdez.
Thank you, Aaron, for the presentation. It was very good. And thank you for the neighbors that came out and making this happen. Traffic circles can add to a neighborhood. And if they're not maintained, of course, that would be an issue. But I think they can definitely add to the neighborhood. They are very effective from what I see. And there are always going to be somebody that's going to turn left where they shouldn't be turning left. That's just, and people are just going to do things like that. I fully support this. Thank you very much.
I just have one question. I'm concerned about the one at Southridge Way because that's still kind of a rural street. It doesn't have sidewalks on either side, and it has barrow ditch to drainage pretty quick, and the road's pretty narrow. And we have pedestrians, bicycles, and cars, and now we're creating another obstacle, basically, that the cars have to go around. Is there a way we can make it even safer? Can we create a pedestrian opportunity there? And Phil mentioned the bicycle situation. I'm concerned that we are asking drivers and others to have too many obstacles there to get through unless we make some additional improvements. And I support safety first and the wish of the residents, but I don't know if we're doing enough. And we've been messing with this since 2010, so it's about time we did something. But I don't know if the utilities director might have an idea that has to do with paving and sidewalks that go beyond traffic management or whatever.
There's certainly other things we can do, and that we can incorporate that as part of this design. Obviously, it's going to probably add cost to it if we do, but if we find that pedestrians are a real concern out there, we can take measures. Obviously, the simplest is to mark it. But going beyond that, you can do raised crosswalks and stuff too that puts the pedestrians at a higher advantage. They're more visible, and then vehicles can't go as fast over their crossings also. But there's a variety of things we could look into as a part of this design that we could incorporate.
Well, I think painting lanes and doing some things like that might also help, but it seems like we need a total approach.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I may add to that, and specifically to your question, I think as we as staff have certainly discussed traffic calming in general and this particular application, and as Aaron kind of commented early on, we are looking at kind of a fresh look about how we approach this. So yeah, I think we would like to spend some time and try to make sure that we manage those issues in these intersections appropriately. I think I might also say that I've placed this on the council tentative calendar as an item yet to be scheduled, is perhaps an update to our traffic calming program. I shared with council, I've got a long history of traffic calming in a part of the country that experiments a lot with the issue, and that's the Pacific Northwest. So I have learned a lot from that, and certainly we as staff have kind of chatted about, how we might look to improve some of our own process, and I think it is time for us to update that and bring it back to council for further discussion.
Well, I totally agree that I think that we need to have a much more universal approach to this. I'm going to support this evening because of the neighbors, because they've been fighting for this for, 2008? And so I don't know that calming circles are the best solution. I have found them to create interesting dilemmas throughout Littleton when you see them. However, we don't seem to have a better solution for this neighborhood right now. And that, quite honestly, is something that we should be working on. And Mark, I appreciate that you have this on an upcoming conversation, because Councilmember Clark is right. The constant complaints about the traffic and the speed of traffic. And I think one of the areas that we hear about it all the time is around these high schools. And Heritage is famous for it. We had a conversation about the name of the street, Rangeview, and the insanity that occurs on Rangeview. So there are other places that we need to address this problem, and it's not always on our streets. So I think this is a call to action for us, that we need to not continue to wait for neighbors to spend 10 years trying to get traffic calmed on their streets, and we need to be a little bit more proactive. And I think we can do it in creative ways, following some examples that are being done in other parts of the country. We don't need to go back to our old-fashioned book of calming circles and speed bumps. But at this point, that's what we've got. These guys need some help and some relief. And I fully support us continuing this conversation and getting giving you some policy direction as we get more information about this. And I would hope in the future, when we have these kind of presentations, that we have a lot more of this information that comes. I would love to see more information from our police and fire department about this issue, because we've heard it before and it's a little contrary to what I'm hearing tonight. So if things have changed, I'd like to know that. And I'd also like to get a better idea of why our enforcement doesn't seem to be working. So, thank you.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion, or shall we vote? Ready to vote?
Vote. The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Ooh, there's that word again.
Okay, I would like to declare a break for 10 minutes. I appreciate everybody waiting, because I know you have some things to do, but we've got to take a break here. It's been almost 2 hours. So we'll start again at 8:30. Okay, I think we're back on the air. It's 8:31. We've just taken a short break. We're up to agenda item 8. This is the second public comment opportunity. This is primarily directed toward anyone who would like to express opinions or questions that weren't part of the public hearings or part of the consent agenda that we've had up to this point. Thank you for hanging in for the 2 hours of that meeting to be able to have your opportunity to speak. An immediate response is not expected. Anyone who would like to speak, hopefully is signed up on the green card. I'll give you a chance if you've missed it, but we do have 11 speakers that would like to speak. And again, we expect the comments to be civil. Disrespectful behavior will not be tolerated. We have a 3-minute time limit. And what I'll do, just to keep it moving along, is I will announce who's speaking, and then I'll say who's on deck so that you know that you're coming up next. The first speaker is Frank Sierra, and Scott Wilson is on deck.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council. My name is Francisco Frank Sierra. I've lived in Littleton now for about 6 years. Really love the community. My wife Carol and I made a decision as I'm nearing retiring that Littleton would be a great city to retire in, and we really enjoy the community. Our first experience here was we rented Nevada Place, and we lived in Nevada Place. We enjoyed living there. We enjoyed being able to walk to all the places that are offered in downtown Littleton. Downtown Littleton is a very small area, as we know. By background, I'm a civil engineer, project director. I work in Santiago, Chile. And so I've experienced these type of housing projects not only in Santiago, Chile, but London, England, when I lived in Mexico, working in Mexico, Indiana, Tampa, Florida. I saw the impacts of putting in this type of housing, even though it's touted as being upscale. I've heard Council Lady Cole mention about, with these roundabouts, putting property values in the tank. Nevada Place has 33 units. This facility that they're going to build's got 62 units. It's basically on the same postage stamp size of the lot. And I guess I was very surprised. I just heard about this week. When I came back from Chile, my wife told me what was going on, and I'm just surprised that there hasn't been a public hearing where we can look at, because I've bought a place. I live on 5654 South Sycamore Street, half a block off of Main Street, and I think having a property like this, basically the property's 1 block off, as you know, off of Main Street. So I would just hope that we would be allowed a public hearing. I understand it's been zoned for what's being built as far as sizes of units and all that, but I think when it was initially zoned, it wasn't zoned for low-income housing as part of the caveat in getting that zone. So with that, I respectfully thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Scott Wilson, and Fran Wilson is on deck.
Scott Wilson, speaking regarding 5591 South Nevada Place. As many of the citizens here, we believe the proposed Summit project is ill-conceived, and if allowed to proceed, will create a net economic detriment to the entire community that goes far beyond just the reduction of property values. Many citizens would love to see a low-impact, aesthetically pleasing project built on the subject site like a park, but we all realize that that is unrealistic. The location is most likely suited for higher density housing development as was originally proposed. If not townhomes or duplexes, perhaps a twin-type development similar to Nevada Place across the street would represent the highest and best use. Much of the information and analysis used to market CHAFA projects focus on the benefits to tax beneficiaries, the low-income residents that receive below-market subsidies. Likewise, low-income, economically blighted neighborhoods where CHAFA projects either replace or convert rundown buildings are used as study examples. In a very recent 2015 study titled, "Who Wants Affordable Housing in Their Backyard?" An equilibrium analysis of low-income property development seems very much on point. Two very prominent Stanford economists looked at the effects of low-income property development in multiple neighborhoods and scenarios, including middle and upper-class neighborhoods like ours. So it's an apples-to-apples comparison. I will briefly quote a few of the conclusions of that very exhaustive 63-page study and its corresponding 2-page review from the Stanford Business Journal. That was entitled, "Is Affordable Housing Good for the Neighborhood?" So these are those conclusions. And I quote, "In higher income neighborhoods, those with median incomes above $54,000, housing prices declined approximately 2.5%. And there appears to be a positive correlation where higher home prices equal higher decline rates. Wealthier neighborhoods didn't see affordable housing as an attractive amenity, and that rippled through the area years after construction. In high-income areas, you saw a strong housing price drop very locally that radiated outward over time and lasted up to 10 years. The analysis revealed that a low-income tax credit project in a low-income region, not like ours, was very valuable to the neighborhood. But in higher income areas like ours, the new building led to a net loss of approximately $17 million. So I would like to ask the council here, if you have a fiduciary responsibility, have you evaluated the total economic effects to the city of Littleton of this project, including sales and use tax implications? And if so, what are those results?
Thank you, sir. You're out of time. Fran Wilson and Scott Kaiser is on deck.
Thank you, Council and Mayor, for hearing us today. I am here today to ask you a question concerning the Littleton Crossing Housing Project. Why does this council support the project? There will be no additional revenue from this project. There will be no sales or use tax. After the project is built, the occupants will not have large amounts of disposable income to spend in the surrounding businesses and restaurants, as many of them will be on EBT cards. You just heard the statistics about property values. Property taxes decrease when property values decrease. Why do you want to support this project? Expenses will increase greatly. During construction, the city will incur many expenses from inspections. Close monitoring of this construction site will be required at this developer, as this developer has every intention of using similar materials to the original plans. This means cheap, low-quality building materials that look kind of what the original intention was. These materials would not be long-lasting and will need maintenance soon after the building is completed, and the developer will not care. Another huge expenditure will be the policing of the area. Additional police officers and overtime pay will be needed to manage the crime associated with individuals with low incomes. The average police officer in the Denver metro area is paid $35.50 per hour. By my estimates, expenditures of $365,000 will be incurred for the police once the building is fully occupied. Why do you support this project? What about parking? We have been told that parking permits will be issued to the occupants of the building. While parking permits sound like a good solution, in actual fact, this will require more policing and does not fix the problem of people wanting to shop and eat at businesses downtown. If the city is really planning correctly, a parking structure needs to be built in the immediate future. That is a tremendous cost. Why do you just support this project? Perhaps you feel we need to support another low-income housing project. That's great. I agree that we should help those in need, but why build a project in this location? We already have 700 low-income units in a 1.5-mile radius of downtown. There are other areas in Littleton where a project like this would work well and benefit all concerned. This particular location is to the detriment of the surrounding areas. And if the purpose of this project was to supply housing for our police and teachers, they won't qualify. The income for qualifying is around $10 an hour. Teachers are paid approximately 2.5 times that amount, and police are paid even more. This project does not beautify the city. This project does not invigorate the economy. The citizens and businesses do not want this project in this location. There appears to be no benefit with the Littleton Crossing project. Why does this council support this project?
Thank you, Fran.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Scott Kaiser, and Ann Kirkpatrick is on deck.
Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. My name is Scott Kaiser. I'm an owner, a resident of downtown Littleton. I also own rental properties that I rent to city workers here as well as the business workers on Main Street. I put together this new development at Littleton Crossing, inspired me to do some research, and there's no doubt that low-income housing, there's a demand for it and there's a need for it. You can make that argument in just about any jurisdiction, any city, any state in the nation at this point, I believe. So the question kind of comes up of why here, why this location when the community does not feel that it's a good location. I did some studies, and then in the immediate area, there's 85 units already in for low-income housing. Within walking distance of downtown Littleton, there's an additional 80. And then within the very near general vicinity, there's another 285. So it feels like we're pulling our weight in District 1 on this front. And I just want to know if we could do a study to see what the impact would be as we keep putting in more and more low-income housing into the small, tight little neighborhood. The other thing that I've noticed on part of this study is there's other communities around here that do want revitalization. You see them asking for this in areas such as Woodlawn and the Boulder, or the Federal and Bellevue area. And it just seems to me like hopefully we could put two and two together and then see if we could take polls to see if there's communities that would want this and want this type of development, because it seems like there are. Finally, there's a frustration with when we go to city council and we ask them about the reasoning behind this, we get an answer that it passes code. And we ask for hearings, public hearings in these type of developments. And I'd also ask you if you're gonna ever consider revamping the codes or changing the codes in the interest of the citizens. Another item I want to point out is just that in 2009, the city did a study when Nevada Place went in. People objected to the size of it because of the parking. Ironically, in 2013, I think we changed the zoning to increase the density, which would logically increase parking issues. So one of those contingencies or the conditions of that was, I think, Ordinance 1, Section 2013. That said that we have to do a parking study before and after this development goes in. So I asked that we do that. The city, that was one of the conditions of this development. And then finally, this out-of-state developer, I wonder if he has the interests of our community in mind. But I do want to point out that he solicited approval from the community with false information. And I think he also gave it to the city council as well, because I got the same information from the city council as well. I think that's deceptive, and we should look into that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Ann Kirkpatrick and Karen Witt is on deck.
Mayor, City Council, nice to meet you, and thank you very much for letting me speak. My name is Ann Kirkpatrick. I also live at 5592 South Nevada. Just to finish up on what Scott was saying, those that would qualify to live in this project, at least in the research that we've done, the Summit Housing did misrepresent themselves to us as a community last December. They also seem to have misrepresented themselves to you. They provided the below description on income requirements, 13 market rate units designed for young professionals such as nurses and people working in IT and financial services earning above $50,000. Rents start at $1,110 a month for a 2-bedroom and $1,350 for a 3-bedroom. 15 units available to those making up to $48,000 and change. That's 60% area median income, AMI. Rents range from just over $900 to just over $1,000. In Littleton, a young police officer and family qualifies for one of these 2-bedroom units. Another 17 of the units are available to those earning about $40,000, or about 50% of AMI, and so on. In reality, though, it appears that many of these units would be Section 8 housing, and I think someone else is going to address that. But I do want to talk a moment more about parking, because I've done some work downtown, just walking around talking to merchants, to see whether this is a concern of theirs or not. And they are quite concerned. I mean, really, we are at a tipping point still. Everything has to work together in order for it to work well. And when we think about the human body, I often use the analogy of the heart, and the heart relies on the lungs, and the heart can't survive without the lungs, and vice versa. But the point being that downtown is like our heart. And if we don't have parking, we don't have lungs. We need parking. And this project looks like just one aspect of it, the parking aspect. We want downtown to continue to thrive. We want people to visit. We want people to continue thinking that Littleton is one of the greatest small towns in America. It is. Let's keep it there. This project feels like something that years from now, if you move forward with this project, it feels like the kind of thing that we'll look back on it and we'll think, what have we done? Why didn't we stop this before it became this blight in our community that hurt our entire community? Thank you.
Thank you. Karen Witt and Mike Witt is on deck.
Good evening, and thanks for listening. Sorry, I'm a little bit hoarse. The members of the community in this room have lived in this city for decades, committed to Littleton's economic and cultural growth. We've paid our taxes and patiently waited, supporting the positive evolution that has taken place, revitalizing Littleton and making it one of the most desirable places to live in Colorado. Our community is a safe place where one can walk down the streets at all hours and enjoy the many beautiful parks that dot the landscape. Why do the leaders of our community want to import crime into our neighborhood? It is well documented that Section 8 program has failed, transferring the issues of crime, drugs, and violence associated with urban areas to the suburbs. This new housing development would move Littleton backwards, transforming our community from a dynamic city to an economically depressed area. It is the opinion of Howard Hussock, the Vice President for Policy Research at the Manhattan Institute, that the failed program of Section 8 housing exports inner city social problems to the suburbs. It is also documented that it does not decrease crime, but rather spreads it out over a larger area. Again, I ask you, why would the leaders of our community want to pave the way for the deterioration of Littleton? I appreciate the fact that you're looking at me. It is required that owners maintain the properties such that they are decent, safe, and sanitary. Information readily available informs us that Summit Housing has a history of poor management and maintenance of their properties. Water damage and rat infestations number among the issues associated with their properties. Other Section 8 federal policies require that the residents not have a history of criminal offenses. There are issues with drug use and associated interactions in the current Section 8 housing near Main Street in Littleton. I have been involved with Family Homestead for a number of years as a volunteer and member of the board. With the exception of the elderly and disabled, the population served has the same profile as those enrolled in the Section 8 housing program. There is a profound difference in the process and the outcome. Those receiving services from Family Homestead must participate in restoring their independence and developing life skills to enable them to care for their children and be contributing members of the society. The program is limited and closely managed. The Section 8 housing program fosters dependence and penalizes the participants for working to improve their circumstances. They continue to require extensive resources of the community. And I'll stop. I see you. Thank you
very much. Yeah. Yeah. So you folks know that's the problem. I can't see that, so I have to depend on the clerk to give me some idea of where the speaker's at.
I thought I needed excessive prompting.
You did great. Thank you. Thank you. Mike Witt, and then Ralph Alvarez is on deck.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I want to address data that's available to everyone in terms of community crime levels and the impact of Section 8 on those crime levels. Also, parenthetically, in former life, I was a mathematician, so I do understand something about the numbers and how they work, and I hope that the presentation is readable. I looked at a lot of data to put this together, and the numbers that I'm showing you are consistent with what's happening everywhere across the country. They're not just Colorado or this neighborhood, but as you can see, there are three categories there. One is the particular neighborhood that we're talking about around Nevada Place. The other is Littleton, including all the Section 8 housing that's here. And the third is Globeville, which is a Section 8 housing project that's in Denver. Why Globeville? Because large cities like to export populations that are problematic for them. One of the ways they do that is through proliferating Section 8 housing into suburban areas. A good example of how cities do that kind of thing is 2 decades ago, Los Angeles exported hundreds of gang members to Denver, Colorado, without Colorado knowing it was happening. They simply, after a gang member was convicted, said, would you like to go to prison, or would you like to have a free airplane ticket to Denver, Colorado, with a promise that you don't come back? So this is not a new kind of habit. Section 8 has proven that it doesn't lower crime that is involved with Section 8, it simply exports it to suburban communities. Section 8 does some great things for people who are elderly, who are disabled, but it also exports crime, and that's the problem here, and that's what's in the data that you're seeing. If you'll notice, the neighborhood has a crime rate currently that is about 1/10 of what the Littleton rate with Section 8 throughout the whole city is. And then if you look at Globeville, it has 3 times the rate that Littleton has. So I think what you're looking at at least from my perspective, is a preview of coming attractions if we bring more of the Section 8 kind of housing that is associated with any large city, including Denver and Globeville, into the suburbs. For that reason, and I know these numbers are hard to hear, but they will be more difficult to hear for the people of Littleton if this development brings the same parallel into the Nevada Place neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mike, are these actual numbers or are these incidents per thousand?
No, those are actual numbers. And by the way, the database I use is the same one that the city uses, which is LexisNexis.
Okay, thank you.
Ralph Alvarez and Deanna Cook is on deck.
Oh, I'm Ralph Alvarez. Thanks. My wife, Carol, owner of NT here in downtown Littleton, which she's 2 years into a 5-year lease. I myself, Blue Ocean Mercantile, which is a company, in 5 years, we projected to about $40 million in sales. I'm looking to move my company where I am now into some different places, perhaps Morrison, perhaps Golden, perhaps Belmar, perhaps downtown Littleton. My wife wants me to commute with her, so more than likely my first choice is downtown Littleton, okay? But if this happens, it's going to change the face of the neighborhood, and I may choose to go elsewhere, as might other people that get to know what's going on over there in Nevada Place. You know, it's a lot of lattes and coats and restaurant meals and stuff that potentially could exit, and therefore the tax revenue along with that. We approached quite a few people to talk about this program and to get involved against it. And about 90% of the folks that we talked to said, I am definitely in support of your initiative to kill the project. It's striking how many people really don't know about it. Secondly, we delivered a lot of emails and correspondence to the Colorado Housing Finance Authority, and apparently a lot of that stuff didn't make it through the system. And when they went to a vote, apparently a lot of paperwork and such was in favor of the project was presented, but in opposition was not. So I've heard some other people talk about some subterfuge and bait switching, and I do think that is an issue at hand here that you guys need to be aware of. And then lastly, we meet a lot of people at the tea shop because it's a gathering place. And a friend of mine who works at the Denver Post called me last week and said, hey, there's some stuff going on in Littleton. Do you know about it? And that really made me jump in and say, what is this all about? And he's saying they were considering an investigative report because it sells papers, basically. And I thought, man, that would be a mess, especially for elected officials, especially for business owners, and we just don't need that in downtown Littleton. We got a great thing going right now. I was here 5 years ago building out the shop at night, is my night job, as I call it, and I was amazed at some of the riffraff that was around here. And it was only a couple of years later when I learned that we had some Section 8 housing right down the street. So I personally have seen a lot of these issues crop up after hours at 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night when I'm building in the shop and I got people knocking on the door trying to hustle me for $20 because their car just broke down and they need to buy some gas. I mean, it was amazing. And I thought, this is beautiful downtown Littleton. I can't believe stuff like this happens here because I had no idea that there was Section 8. So things like that will happen. And what we're asking you to do as a group is just really do the right thing. It's not too late to kill this, maybe delve a little deeper to see if these people are being forthright with you. They have no interest in our community. They have interest in the almighty buck. And that's not a good thing. All right? And there's better places where these folks can go to that are more accessible to King Soopers, more accessible to Walgreens, more accessible to schools. I mean, we're in an isolated epicenter here, and it makes sense to make this that bright, shining hill on the sea, on the hill, right? Just like Ronald Reagan.
Thank you, sir. Deanna Cook. Betsy McCain is on deck.
Cubs 7-2.
One more time. What was the score?
7-2.
Thank you. What inning?
Cubs. I'm not sure. I'm Deanna Cook. Marion City Council members, thank you for your time tonight. You've heard many important facts and reasons to be concerned about the Summit project currently under review, and there are many more, some of which I've previously written to you about. Research showing negative economic impacts are likely. A high ratio of subsidized housing to market rate housing already exists.
Mayor Hancock's 10-year plan to pay back the $150 million in these low-income tax credits debt will impact all of us, especially new developers. Parking issues are unquestionable. The vitality of our downtown businesses is already impacted. Existing low-income housing also by other they're already impacted by existing low-income housing and also by other new development projects coming through. Crime will definitely increase. South Metro Housing may not even exist as Littleton's housing authority any longer or have authority to agree to tenancy priority for HUD Section 8 tenants. Concerningly, city employees may be making development selection decisions on their own, at least to some extent and without City Council's review. Littleton Crossing may be exempt from paying sales and use tax. To top it off, Colorado Housing and Finance Authority specifically withheld critical opposition input from the community, which seems highly irregular. I believe it's true. Our citizens unfortunately perceive Littleton as making decisions that favor possibly special interest groups or certain individuals, and ignoring our zoning laws for so now that they no longer are meaningful or meet the needs of our beautiful town with its unique blend of historic preservation and modern-day amenities. It's easy to say we can't change the laws, but you can. You can agree with us that the proposed use and impacts from this project are substantially different than originally planned for. Enforce required parking studies which have not been provided when parking issues we face are already at crisis level. Review and override or abolish South Metro Housing, if appropriate, which may no longer have authority for Littleton. Consider Summit misrepresenting important facts to Chaffa and or Littleton. Perform economic analysis around the substantial cost to us. A 10-year tax debt all of us will pay through property and new development taxes versus income, which may be minimal or even negative. At a minimum, determine a public hearing is in order and allow your voting constituents a say in what happens to their community. We represent the strong majority of downtown Littleton residents, including businesses, who are seriously concerned about this project. We respectfully ask that you help us do what's right for all of us. Now is the time to take action, as you are fully authorized to do. Help us save downtown Littleton. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Betsy McCain, followed by Don Bruns.
Mayor and City Council, thank you for your time. I am a resident of the neighboring Columbine Valley, but I'm also a property owner in downtown Littleton. In my speaking tonight, it's not so much about the specifics going on. While I'm completely in agreement with the people who have presented before me, it's more of a philosophical discussion in terms of what is the proper role of the government in this? Why is government artificially manipulating the property values in this town by creating low-income housing in downtown Littleton? Like they said, there are other areas in Littleton that this could be a better suited fit for. But I'm all about private property rights. However, when you're injecting tax dollars into it, it no longer becomes, it's no longer really a private property issue at that point when us taxpayers are having to help pay a developer to offer a artificially low cost place of residence for people. And I also am frustrated with the lack of transparency and honesty that seems to be going on in this whole process in terms of the mountains of letters and concerns that the residents had sent in that did not seem to make it to the Chaffa board to present the dissenting side on this argument. And I do some work down at the Capitol, and I'm not surprised that that happened, unfortunately, but I just really wish that the City Council would really listen and take a step back and take an opportunity to really work with their constituents on this and figure out perhaps a better solution in terms of location or things like that versus a prime piece of property in downtown Littleton. Thank you.
Ma'am, would you give me your name again?
It's Betsy McCain, is that correct? Betsy McCain?
McCain.
Sorry. Betsy McCain.
Oh, Betsy.
Like John.
Okay, thank you.
Not related,
Don Bruns. The overhead, yeah.
Oh, Don, you're not going to expect us to read that, are you?
What's that?
I said you're not going to expect us to read that, are you?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Don Bruns, District 4. This is about the South Platte Park Management Plan, October 2016 draft. Limits of acceptable change on page 46 of the draft states that these are managed through an operational document that establishes measurable indicators for intervention. A posted remark then recommends changing from a carrying capacity-based management system to a flexible and adaptive management system based on defining acceptable changes with increased use. This is problematic because the draft provides no objective criteria by which the acceptability of changes to be measured. It does not identify what that flexible adaptive management system is. Instead, its loose verbiage commits park managers to sustainably achieving nothing. The limits of acceptable change is a system that was developed for wilderness planning. The U.S. Forest Service's Intermountain Station in Ogden, Utah, published it in 1985. Here are a couple of revealing statements from it that council should know about. The challenge is not how to prevent any human-induced change, but rather one of deciding how much change will be allowed to occur, where, and the actions needed to control it. The LAC process requires managers to define desired wilderness conditions and to undertake actions to maintain or achieve these conditions. When responsibly addressed, carrying capacity defines those essential conditions. The draft does not yet do that, but instead misrepresents LAC by sidestepping the carrying capacity issue altogether. For more than 30 years, Bo Shelby at Oregon State University and other recreation professionals have worked to show managers how to responsibly address carrying capacity using LAC to help get there. At least 4 elements of capacity are being addressed wherever LAC is actually being applied. Physical addresses the constraints of available space. Social addresses constraints imposed by setting character conditions required to produce the beneficial outcomes that affected publics want, including visitors as well as adjoining neighborhoods, and avoid the adverse outcomes they want to avoid. Ecological addresses biophysical constraints imposed by land and water resources required to maintain the essential setting character conditions on which the sustainable production of desired individual, social, economic, and yes, environmental outcomes depends. Administrative addresses operational constraints of available management staff, service providers, and their professional expertise and available fiscal resources. Although District 4 Councilmember Brinkman called the draft excellent at Council's last study session, it is difficult to see how that can be true with these deficiencies in view. Now is the time for commitment and follow-through. Otherwise, the park's essential and defining character will be eroded, as will the important benefits it provides to our communities who depend on it. Thank you very much. I wish I had time to tell you why this is so important, because it really is. And the park is such a jewel. We really need that additional work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Don.
Don.
Can we get a copy of that also?
Yeah, please.
Could you leave that with the clerk?
Yeah,
Say that again?
Your copy, Don, that you put projected there that's in front of you. Could we get a copy?
Oh, I'm sorry.
And
I've got the whole thing I said.
There you go.
If I had to take a test on what you just said, I would flunk it.
Yeah. You were going pretty fast to fit the 3 minutes.
Well, if you give me 4 minutes, I could talk slower.
I think it'd be more of the same.
Usually I could talk more slowly.
Thank you, Don.
There you go. Here you go. Thanks, Don.
That's the end of the people. That is the end of the people that I had signed up to speak. Is there anyone who failed to sign that would like to speak? Please.
I'm Carol Breezak, and I live in the 4th District. Last week, I went to the Inglewood City Council meeting because Marcus Scott and Monica Babbitt were going to be there talking about urban renewal and increment. And as you know, that's one of my favorite subjects. They have an urban renewal area called General Works, and it's been dormant, hasn't produced increment. But they have a new project, so they wanted to know whether or not they needed to repeal the plan so that the city could keep the money rather than it going to their urban renewal authority. And when Monica explained to them that there was not any tax coming from this project, it was tax exempt. The council went bananas, calling what they learned outrageous. The city manager stood up and said, yes, it is outrageous. He just learned about it. Turns out the Foundry is a project that's been approved by Colorado Housing and Finance Authority, and they have partnered for $100 with the Inglewood Housing Authority, and now they are tax exempt. All of this, I'm listening, and poor Inglewood, they found out they don't have just one, they've got two, both in urban renewal areas. They can't even figure out how to create increment in urban renewal areas. But it made me think of the Littleton Crossing, because I've been hearing some of this. So I've started to do a little investigating, and what I've learned is the CHAFA is an organization that provides tax credits to those that apply. And in the instance of Littleton Crossing, they have a $1,240,000 tax credit per year for 10 years. And they commit this property to 40 years worth of low-income housing. They've changed the land use. It is low-income housing. These tax credits get sold to a syndicate or an investment group, and they use it to dollar by dollar take a tax write-off on their tax return. The money that is paid for those tax credits is what the builder uses to reduce the cost of his building in order to charge below market rate rent. So when I started reading the law, and I know you guys don't like me to read the law, but I want you to go back and read the urban renewal law, because there's one definition in the urban renewal law about what increment is, and you might clear up the argument Doug was talking about. But there's a lot of similarity between the Urban Renewal Authority and the Housing Authority. They're both corporate body politics. They have quite a bit of power. And so we have now in Littleton two authorities that have power to make decisions as unelected officials and don't have to come before you. The one good thing about urban renewal, at least they had to bring their urban renewal plans to you. You had to consider them and either approve them or not. It appears that the Housing Authority doesn't have that responsibility. So I encourage you to look into what all of this means. Has our Housing Authority bought into a partnership to make the Littleton Crossing tax exempt? There's lots of things going on here, and I don't hear it being talked about, and I think you need to do some work. Thank you.
Pam.
I'm Pam Chadbourne. I live a block and a half from here and a block from the proposed Littleton Crossing. I had no idea people were going to come to talk about that tonight. Well, I agree that there are issues with how the city handles project proposals. I want to point out that, and I've probably said this before, and Planning Board has said this before, and you folks have said this before. When you consider a rezoning, it is about the land use and the zoning. It is not about the pretty pictures. It is not about what the developer promises. The comments about misrepresentation are whether, in my mind, you believe them or not, and whether staff is bringing that material to you as what is important. I have spoken to you in Planning Commission Board before, many times actually, about staff needing to present the city's point of view, the impact on traffic, the impact on parking, the impact on housing, not the pretty pictures. And I know all of you know this, but in spite of that, rezonings still occur. And in this case, something unanticipated happened. Now, I happen to be in favor of low-income housing, and I'm shaking with fury at some of the things I heard tonight. Our Section 8 housing in Littleton is very well managed, and it is not criminal. The problem is bad landlords, and I'm going to tell you that whether it's Section 8 or another house, wherever it is, if the landlord isn't good, you're going to have a problem with some tenants, and that's the problem. It is not the residents. So I'm in favor of low housing in this site. I believe in it strongly, and these people who come to you and say, well, this is our high-income neighborhood, and this is our neighborhood, I'm going to point out that the people who lived in downtown Littleton, and I know this because my relatives built the house I live in 1952, were working-class people. They were not high-income people. The folks talking about this are newcomers, and the change in the city displaced a whole bunch of working people. I know this by walking around. One of them had 4 children and had no idea where they were going to go. So the people who were displaced don't want to come to talk to you. They're afraid they're going to get kicked out by their landlords. You're not going to see them. But they are impacted by not having housing. So I have a bunch more to say in no time, but I want you to know there's a whole other side to this issue that's not being represented, and we need low-income housing near the transit station because these folks don't have cars. So, thank you.
Looking around, I don't see anyone else who'd like to speak. Okay, that completes our opportunity for public comment. It brings us to item 9 on our agenda, and item 9 is the opportunity for the manager and the council to make a report or make comments. I want to turn it first to our interim city manager.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Council, I have prepared kind of an informational statement here regarding the Littleton Crossing Nevada 2 project. And so I'd like to read that. I also have some copies here for council. When I'm done with this, we'll obviously have this as a part of the record. We'll also post this on our web so that others can access that. So I think I'll ask for the clerk's help here. So I might ad-lib a little bit here. So what you see in text here, I might change a little bit here, but we'll certainly get the accurate representation here on our web. The property was rezoned to planned development, residential, PDR in 2013, with an ability to develop the property as a residential multifamily building with up to a maximum of 72 multifamily residential units. The PDR approval in 2013 with public process did require the project to have parking spaces at 1.07 spaces per unit. It also requires the applicant to provide a parking analysis of needs for on-street parking, both at initial submittal and then again later in the process, with a potential to establish a residential parking permit program. On June 29, 2016, a final site development plan application was submitted for a multifamily project called Littleton Crossing, consisting of 63 residential units. There will be a total of 80 parking spaces in the garage for the project, which is at 1.27 spaces per unit and is above the required 1.07 spaces unit requirement. If the project is found to be consistent with the 2013 PDR and all the applicable city land use codes, the project has vested property rights and is required to be approved administratively. If the applicant wishes to pursue changes outside the approved PDR, there will be more public process. Otherwise, there is no more public process and the application is processed administratively. It is the city's understanding that the developer, Summit Housing Group Incorporated, did apply for the Colorado Housing Finance Authority, CHAFA, 9% low-income tax credits. Earlier this fall, through the CHAFA competitive grant process, the project was awarded tax credits. The project appears to be a mix of affordable and market rate units, 17 units rented at 40% of the area median income, AMI, 17 units at 50% AMI, 15 units at 60% AMI, 13 market rate rented units, and 1 on-site manager residential unit, according to the CHAFA News release on this tax credit award for the project. The city's code do not enable us to regulate, audit, or change any CHAFA process. In May of this year, the developer requested the city write a letter of support for their application to CHAFA. The city did not write a letter of support. The city manager at the time directed the community development director, Jocelyn Mills, to write a letter to the applicant that addressed the development review process and the city's comprehensive plan. A copy is attached to this statement. The developer continued to request a letter of support through the summer, but staff continued to decline. The city is not familiar with the federal requirements regarding Section 8 housing, and it is our understanding that the project will not be pursuing the rentals per this federal program. The city is also unfamiliar with the details of CHAFA's processes and any other state or federal requirements regarding these types of housing programs. If City Council would like more information on CHAFA and how low-income tax credit program, staff recommends that we schedule a study session with CHAFA. And as of this afternoon, CHAFA was willing to come to a council study session and discuss their processes. The project is currently in the city's development review process, and information is posted on the city's development activity list. A copy of this statement and the city's May letter will be made a record of this meeting. Be happy to answer any questions the council may have, but I thought it would be appropriate based on the amount of emails that have been circulating here of late. Some of the information's been correct, some of it, quite honestly, is not correct. And so this is an attempt here to try to set the record straight, at least in part of that. I'd be more than willing to meet with people if they were interested in doing so to talk about some of the specifics, but this is a statement as the city understands kind of the current project.
Questions?
Yeah, I'm going to comment. While it is a tax credit property, and that's through the IRS Section 42 code, the fact that it's going to be ever how many units this project is, 42, and it's at 60%, 50%, whatever. Bottom line is tax credit properties cannot turn down Section 8 vouchers. This property has the potential to be 100% Section 8.
Other comments?
I would like to have a study session on CHAFA because I know almost nothing about it. And I think that it would be incumbent on us to figure out, or at least learn what's happening with CHAFA and their relationship and how this process goes on and things like this.
Yeah, I've been certified in this for many years, and I've dealt with, probably have been part of 50 projects that have been built with tax credits, so I know a little bit about them, too.
Yeah, you're probably the expert on the council.
And probably no more than the acting city manager. So that's in part why we're recommending that we meet with CHAFA to understand kind of their processes and regulations.
Bill?
I think it's important to note also that we have an RFP out for a housing study, and part of that was to assess the city's housing needs at all levels and to determine where in the city it would be appropriate to have certain types of projects and where those holes are and how that all works. That's a little late to the game for this project, but it would be interesting to incorporate that into the CHAFA study session, and I think that's appropriate too. You know, I feel the pain that the people are feeling because even if some of the information is wrong, if it feels like a threat to you, it is a threat to you, and only time will tell. But Jerry's point is well taken on the Section 8, and as I understand it, the project does not have units that are specifically designated for Section 8. And Jerry, you know this better than I, but they have to take every one of them. They have to take a voucher, but they don't have specific units designated for that.
They cannot not accept a voucher.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Additional comments?
So,
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, and Mark and whoever else gets involved in some of this, I mean, we can talk about the CHAFA process, but we also are in a bit of limitation on how much we can talk about any specific project at this point in time, because there is nothing that is coming to council on this, other than talking about it as an example of what the process has been. Because I know we're limited with not trying to cross the line with regard to 106 processes as well.
Councilmember, I think currently the project as submitted, if they stay within the requirements of what was approved here a couple of years ago, this process then would remain administratively reviewed and approved. So it would not be coming back to the Planning Commission or to the City Council. However, maybe to your point, is if for some reason they get into this project a little further and they decide they want to amend something that pushes them outside of that approval, then there will definitely have to be public process.
Right, and then the one clarification I would add to your comments is the project was already zoned for multifamily residential or multi-unit residential prior to 2013. It was just with regard, I believe the parking units total was going to be something like 75 at that point in time, in conjunction with the 72 units.
There is some history, prior to 2013. Quite honestly, I'm not aware of it. I think in fairness to myself and other staff, some of us came after that particular date, so we're having to resurrect the record. And I can appreciate even some of the comments on the part of some of the citizens here who maybe understood the presentation to be one thing. What gets approved, quite honestly, is the record, and that's what staff has to work from. It's what we must work from. Sometimes that can be different.
Councilmember Cole.
So I have a question. So we got the project. We have, as I'm hearing it, fairly much nothing we can do. But one of my concerns is the quality of what's built, and particularly the facades. And if we're going to have something, I won't give an address, but there is something downtown that has some external, the facade is not really what some people had thought it was going to be. It's not really helping downtown. We can't do very much about what that is. But is there potentially something we could do working with the developer if we think the materials, the facade, whatever, are not going to really help the value of downtown sustain itself, that we might do some kind of public-private interaction?
Well, certainly our codes, and if there are any design guidelines, anything that's formally adopted would certainly shape that review and approval process. If there are things that we as staff, or even, I suppose, input from citizens that would wish us to perhaps negotiate with a developer for something beyond that, sure, we're more than willing to do that. I think we just have to keep the expectations realistic. If there are opportunities to somehow partner, I'm not quite sure exactly what that might look like, but if staff could perhaps look for opportunities, not sure how that might play out, but if that looks like something promising, obviously we would bring that back for council consideration.
So there are also some fees that we charge, so potentially getting upgrade in materials or whatever, we theoretically could offset by waiving of some fees.
Councilmember Cole, I think you might be wading into an issue that might be a little difficult for us to respond to at this moment, but...
Yeah, no, I didn't
yeah.
figure right now. I'm just wanting to put it out there for some thinking.
Yeah, we as staff certainly are trying to be responsive to the concerns of our citizens, no matter where the project's at. So I think it's an opportunity for us to try to critically look at this, do our best to negotiate, if nothing else, a project that best fits that. But obviously, we are, in this particular case, we have a public process, approved a project, and they have vested rights for which we must honor.
Thank you.
Additional comments, Bill?
Just a relatively minor point. I noticed the parking study that they're required to provide, and that comes in the part of the next step, as I understand. But it addresses parking prior to the project and then after the project, but the delta is assuming that nothing else happened, that there were no changes in the downtown area. And as one who parks downtown almost every day, I can tell you there have been a lot of changes since that was passed. Is there any way we can modify that requirement that the parking study consider changes in downtown and make it real? I mean, a parking study that doesn't consider changes in downtown is worthless.
You know, I think we'd be the first to admit, myself, Jocelyn Mills, and other staff, as we looked at that particular requirement of what was approved, it's a little difficult for us at this moment to interpret exactly what to do with it. So I do think we have some work to do with staff internally to figure out a practical application of that. There's not a lot of detail on that. So I think we're going to have to think through that carefully about really how we apply that. Now, I will say, I do believe there's a larger conversation that's necessary in the entire downtown about parking, regardless of this project. I do believe it is an opportunity for us to engage our citizens at a very early level. You'll probably hear more of that from me in the coming months, but I do think that it's probably time for us to think about what is it we can do short-term and probably long-term, and we do have a specific proposal about how we might approach that. I think it ties well, quite honestly, into the council priority discussion that we're going to have with you later here this month, and specifically when it talks about citizen engagement and how we approach that. So I don't want to get too deep into that because right now it's a concept that staff is kind of working through. I'm not quite sure exactly how that might play out, but quite honestly, I think there's a lot to be gained if we can look at parking in short term and probably long term.
We are right on top of each other.
Additional comments to the city manager's comments? I just have a couple things. There are a number of things that are concerning, but one of them is the Colorado Housing Finance Authority did not review all evidence from the community when they made their decision. And I'm really concerned about that. And I wonder, as we talk to them or as we pursue any kind of relationship with them, if there's some way we can get a copy of the public record or the things that they looked at. I'm also concerned that there was a presumption perhaps of a level of support because of perhaps what South Metro Housing gave them, or what perhaps, I don't know because I don't have the record, that they felt there was some level of support that perhaps was not merited. And I think we need to research that. That has to go to that goes to the credibility of council.
Yes, the city has actually made a public disclosure request to CHAFA for the application material. So we hope to receive that here in the near term. I think inviting CHAFA here and having a discussion about maybe this specific process and what kind of comments they did receive and what they did with them, certainly would be appropriate, not only in this project, but perhaps in a general sense.
Thanks. Shall we proceed with council comments?
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. Just as part of the city manager's comments, I do want to allow a little bit of time for our acting city attorney. He's got a couple of comments he wanted to make on.
Please.
Yes.
Thanks, Mark. Mayor and council, since this is my first council member in this, or council meeting in this position as acting city attorney, I just wanted to share a couple of thoughts with you. I know you saw my colleague Paul Godek last time when I was on vacation. And I have a previously long-time scheduled out-of-state appearance at a municipal conference at the next meeting. So you're going to see my colleague Brandon Dittman, who some of you have met before. And for the most part, the way we have this set up is that I've got part-time hours here at City Hall, 3 days a week. Usually on 2 of those 3 days, it will be me that's here. Most of the other time, Brandon will be the second person here. He's young and very sharp. So feel free to hammer him as hard as you'd like. And he's pretty good on his feet, although admittedly doesn't have the years of experience. And Paul does, even though he's mostly a litigator. And I wanted him here at the last meeting because before I went on vacation, we had dissolution of urban renewal scheduled for October 18th, and I thought it was probably better not to expose Brandon to that on his first meeting. But now I get that in December, so I'm really looking forward to that. Anyway, I wanted to let you know a little bit about how that has been set up so that you know that we're here at least a few days a week. I've had a number of meetings with Mark and with the executive management team about interaction, meeting with both Lena and Becky about how we're going to apportion up legal work between Lena and those on my staff, how city staff requests an opportunity to interact with me on projects that they need to talk to me about. And I suspect it's going to take a few weeks to have that working smoothly, but I just wanted to let you know that most of the time you will be seeing me at council meetings, occasionally not, and that we're trying to work diligently to make this work in the interim time period while you seek a new full-time city attorney.
Thank you. So are we good? We're good, okay. And thank you for your report. Let's go with the city council members. We'll start this time down at this end, Bill.
I'd like to talk about downtown a little bit. It's a big topic today, and downtown's our cultural core, and we all know that. It's pretty inarguable. How do you say that? Inarguable. But it's our most talked about Littleton amenity, and whenever you talk about why people love it, why they come here, why we're named one of the top cities in America in our size category, downtown is in the fore. And you can see that. I don't know if any of you dared to walk down Main Street Saturday when the trick-or-treaters were there, but it was just a madhouse. I came down to go for a bike ride. I keep my bike in my office. I couldn't even get out my door, so I gave up. But it was just wonderful. We see the same kind of thing for the Candlelight Walk and the Western Welcome Week. And those don't happen by accident. Those are examples of really good work by past councils that have come in and done things like put a historic district in place that preserves some of our buildings and put incentives in place to encourage people to maintain those facilities, which in turn attracts higher quality tenants, higher quality shopping, and brings more dollars to the community. And it's a good example of how incentives work, and it's a good example of how you can work as a council to enhance our revenues. It's enhanced taxes. I had Mr. Farman pull some data. From 2009 through 2015, our citywide retail sales taxes increased by 29.7%, so say 30%. The downtown taxes increased by 44.7% over that same period. So 30% versus 45. We had 50% more in tax increases in the downtown area than throughout the citywide. That puts, based on 2015 data, an extra $167,000 in our city cash register. That's an example of how the city council can work to enhance our revenue stream. It's an example of economic and cultural sustainability, and our job as a council, I think, a large part of it is enhance the experience of living in Littleton. That's what a lot of this conversation has been about tonight. So the popularity of downtown is unquestioned. One of the things that has created is a parking problem. And I sat on the Historic Preservation Board when we put the district in place, and we said, we will know we will have succeeded when we've created a parking problem. So we got what we thought was coming, and now it's up to the city to solve that problem. So I share the acting city manager's need to get a parking solution involved in it. Should be a combination of citizens, staff, and council in trying to find this, because it really is critical to the community. And it's important that we do it sooner, I think, rather than later. So I just wanted to work toward that.
Thank you. Phil.
Yes, I'll cover a couple of items in the context of enhanced living conditions. We did have a discussion earlier and actually had a motion that passed relative to authorization for traffic calming on a particular street. As we've have increased levels of traffic leading to congestion in a number of areas around town, particularly most of our major arterials, folks have found release by finding cut-throughs, which will be my term. I appreciate Aaron's study in working with the community around Windermere, but there are other streets that we've talked about that also need to say, hey, is there something we should be doing? And so I look forward to hearing about those and where we may be in the processes and what it might take to address some of those streets, particularly in our neighborhoods that are not major arterials but are close to that, that are now being used as cut-throughs or byways that folks are finding to avoid the congestion that exists on our major arterials. That was item one. Second, with regard, consent agenda item 5G that we had this evening, dealing with group homes. In some of our discussions, staff was encouraged to include in some of the research and awareness, taking a look at the Ombudsman's office and what are some of the responsibilities by the state and the county with regard residents in group homes, and what is the city's role in that, recognizing that as well, and trying to understand not just the issue with regard to this particular home, but what kind of precedent issues there may be involved with regard any kind of resolution that we're working toward, so that we're not alone, because we're not alone in some of that. So I want to make sure that that happens, and given that the acting city attorney is now here and was not present for those others, that indeed he's aware of those desires to make sure that we have that reach out when we're dealing with this issue, and have a good understanding of what is our responsibilities, what is actually happening relative to the responsibilities on the part of the state that is terrifically stretched right now in this area of dealing with seniors and seniors with disabilities. And then thirdly, he's no longer here, but for the finance director, when it comes to the fee schedule, I was a little disappointed, and this was consent agenda item 5F, which will come back to us now, is taking a look at the before and after, not just the schedule itself. I mean, there was a quick summary of what percentage increases, but I have to imagine that that was more of an average than necessarily a precise item, and would like to see differences between the 2016 and 2017 schedules put side by side. And I've had a rough discussion with some, but I think that would be something that would help folks understand what the impact is on fee adjustments. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Jerry.
Bill, I apologize, stepped on your words early, and I apologize for interrupting. You owe me one, or I owe you. You can interrupt me sometime. I apologize.
I'll do that.
I'm sure. Not now. But hey, regarding the Nevada Place, I was on Planning Commission when that was originally approved. And it was Nevada Place 1 and Nevada Place 2 at that time. Eventually, because they said they couldn't finance it to build Nevada Place 2, that's when they came in with a rezoning to change the number of units, increase the number of units, change them to one bedroom, that kind of stuff. And the majority of council approved that. And then eventually, now we're where we are today with this property that we're, at least some of us aren't happy about. District 2, as far as low-income housing goes, and I know one of our residents or citizens, is very passionate about low-income housing. And in my opinion, District 2 has more than its fair share of low-income housing, and I think District 1 has its own fair share. And I think of communities like Columbine or Centennial or Highlands Ranch, if they want to build low-income housing, I think they should jump in and get a piece of the action, because if everybody's so excited about having it. Littleton does have its share of low-income housing. We also had approved $50,000 to the Housing Authority, the South Metro, for a housing study. Are we ever going to get a housing study?
Mike Broughton, Deputy City Manager. The RFP, so I picked that up after the staffing change, and the RFP just went out last week after a formalized process to develop that RFP with a group of folks. So
When did
we're
we-
anticipated that the proposal should be back the week before Thanksgiving, I believe it is, with the study to occur from there until early 2017.
And when did we approve the $50,000?
That'd be last January.
So we're talking about 2 years to get this, or it's going to come in January, the report finally, or?
You approved it in in the current year's budget, and then it will be finally completed in early 2017.
Because during this time, that the city had come out and give us a report on housing in Littleton, which I thought was very good, and why we decided to go out and do another 50,000 was that I wasn't in favor of it, I know that. I think that's it, that's all I have, and I interrupt me anytime.
Thank you. Councilmember Cole.
Three things. A few weeks ago, we talked about the Centennial Elementary School playground, I believe. We mentioned that was open. Bill and I attended that dedication, and there were really great kudos for the city and particularly Mike for his facilitation of that. But I'm making comment, I might have said this before, but I want to remind people, whatever age you are, when the kids are not using the playground, you can go and use the equipment. You can use the swings. I tested one of them. You can get on this incredible geodesic jungle gym kind of thing, but it's for people of all ages when the school is not using.
I think if I did that, Peggy, somebody would call the cops.
Anyway, so that was just one thing. On a more serious note, I learned, I think in the last week or so, the city is not enforcing the no smoking ordinance that applies to downtown. If we have an ordinance, I think we need to enforce the ordinance. If we think we don't want to enforce the ordinance, then let's bring it to council and repeal it. But I don't think, I mean, people were complaining to me about smoking. I said, oh, we have an ordinance, blah, 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 and then I find out it's not being enforced. So it's an issue for us to think about. Then on a happier note, kind of fun stuff, the next 2 Sundays are the city's leaf recycling program. So I hope if you've got bags of leaves or you need to rake them up and put them in bags, you'll take advantage of the city leaf recycling, and that's the next 2 Sundays from 10 until 2. And you can, even when you put the leaves, dump the leaves, if you want, you can dive into the leaf pile. But anyway, so I hope you'll take advantage of that program too. And I think that's it. Thank you.
We bought about 50 pounds of candy for Halloween and had not a single trick-or-treater come. It may have been the flamethrower I had in front of the door, but, so I'm going to have to eat all that candy myself.
Wait a minute, we thought you were going to bring it here.
Which means I won't be able to fit on the slides.
We'll be so excited that there'll be more of you.
Yeah, a lot more will be after that. There is an election coming up this November, shortly, and I wanted to get on my soapbox about Amendment 71, which is sometimes called Raise the Bar. What it really should be called is Make the Bar Unattainable, and it's...
Excuse me, I hate to interrupt. I just want to advise council that there's a state law that prohibits the local governments from utilizing, or any governmental entity from utilizing public funds and public assets to promote candidates or issues on the ballot. And council is permitted the limited ability to pass a resolution in support or in opposition to a ballot issue, not candidates, but for individual council members to basically advocate for or against an issue, the city would be exposing itself to liability for a claim for violating the Fair Campaign Practices Act by putting on television that basically advocacy for a political position.
So I thought I was allowed to express my opinion.
The council is allowed to express its opinion in the form of a resolution. Individual council members are not allowed to, any more than citizens would be allowed to come down during public comment and advocate one way or the other. We'd be using public funds to support or oppose a position on the ballot. There are Secretary of State's opinions, decisions in cases where those kinds of challenges have been made, and I'm very confident in that advice. So I hate to cut you off, and I might not even disagree with you personally, but we probably ought not to go further on that or any other issue.
Well, yeah. Just move. Never mind. Next topic.
Never mind.
Just a couple of things. Peggy, I agree with you on the smoking ordinance. I've been really disappointed in how our direction regarding that has been, in my opinion, poorly executed up to and very close to the point of being ignored. I've had a number of conversations with Mark, City Manager Ralph, and also with Economic Development Director Denise Stevens regarding that. Believe that there's probably a two-pronged approach, primarily an approach also, may I just add, that I've heard from a number of the retailers and restaurants down there that they're disappointed they're not seeing any support from the city in terms of messaging, which was part of the enforcement objective of this ordinance. And so a effort is being conducted out of the Economic Development Department at this point to improve the messaging that's down there, to get it into the retailers, to work with the shops and the merchants down there who want to support us on this, because I think many of them are seeing the value of this. And I think we'll start to see some things coming, Mark. Maybe at some point Denise could even steal 15 minutes at a study session and share with us some of what she's doing so that we then in turn can help support her. Second thing is, could you please explain the crack seal with the toilet paper?
Hey, what? I'd be happy.
Well, if you haven't driven through South Park.
Is that a Halloween joke?
Well, I thought it was a Halloween, we got TP'd, Littleton got TP'd, but no, if you drive through South Park, you're in for a treat.
I actually brought Mr. Ralph some toilet paper from South Park yesterday and presented it to him. I thought it was,
It's not isolated in South Park.
it's all over the place.
I would love to address this one. I'm actually putting together a press release, kind of talking about this, because we're getting questions, which is fine. We've never actually done this kind of crack filling to this magnitude before.
What is the problem? Yeah.
Roadway tar.
Proceed a
Be
little
happy
bit.
to explain it. So what the process is that we have a crack fill contractor going about parts of the city for which we use a liquid tar material into the crack, and we use what we call a shoe to squeegee it into place, and it leaves obviously a large mark there of the material. The practice is that you then cover that with toilet paper so that it then reduces the tracking, so that when you step on it, you don't get the tar on your shoe, on your bicycle, or certainly the vehicle doesn't pull it up. This is a standard practice. In fact, it's in the Colorado Department of Transportation as a typical standard for how you manage crack fill. The use of
What ply?
single ply, quite honestly.
It's from Haiti.
And that's very true. It's actually a CDOT standard for managing crack fill.
Interesting.
So we're TPing our own streets.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do
And it's
high school students know that?
Yeah. It's biodegradable, by the way, so that's kind of the whole purpose of why I use it. If you don't use some kind of material like that, and again, toilet paper is a cheap biodegradable alternative, it does tend to track, and you have a different set of problems that people call you on. And if you ever track that into your house, that becomes a real issue, and I've experienced that, by the way.
So what brand are we using?
We didn't regulate that.
So I think part of what we're seeing is the effect of some incredibly different weather in October where we're not getting the rain and the cool, the rain would certainly dissipate the toilet paper and the cool would certainly help, so.
It'd be gone in a day.
Yeah,
typically.
but now it's lasting through Halloween plus.
Thanks for bringing
Just
that-
one,
Thanks
yeah.
for bringing that up.
Well, up here, when you drive by and you see it, you're like, what the heck? The other thing is, I just wanted to get some clarification because I don't think, we met with the sewer treatment plant management staff and our counterparts in Inglewood City Council and our top-level staff were at this meeting. And I did have to leave about 10 minutes or so early, so I wasn't sure if there was a final wrap-up or conclusion, if there was a to-do list that followed from that. There were a lot of comments being made that were not being, there was no conversation engaging on those comments, so I wasn't sure if we were just going off of what a couple of folks were feeling or if there was some sort of consensus built at the end of that meeting and what we can expect, if anything, and when.
Yes, I believe in my weekend report, I believe it was last week, forgive me if I'm mistaken, but I did try to put in a statement there that Inglewood and the wastewater treatment plant staff specifically are trying to put together a meeting summary and basically an action plan of how they would address some of the issues raised. I have not seen a draft of that. I do have my opinion about how to address some of that. So I would hope to weigh in on that, but at this point in time, I do not have a date for which that will be submitted here to all of council, both in Inglewood and Littleton. I certainly will ask Eric Keck here tomorrow, try to get an update on that.
Okay, thank you.
How was it attended, by the way? I mean, I wasn't able to attend. Was Inglewood?
I think there were 3 Inglewood council members missing, and we had 2. No, just you.
Just you, Chair.
Just you,
Because
Jeff.
last time we had a meeting with Inglewood, they didn't show up either. I'm wondering, we need to find a better time we can meet with Inglewood. And if, morning is not a good time, then we need to find evenings.
Well, if I may, Council, I have lots of ideas about how we can make that meeting a little more effective. In fact, I think that was part of the discussion we even had a couple of weeks ago. So especially with what we're about to be faced here for the next several years, we have obviously a large capital discussion to kind of talk through. So I think that's an opportunity for us to kind of raise the bar on our meetings there with the city of Inglewood and our wastewater treatment plant.
It would be nice to have the more public meetings, though, instead of just in a little conference room at the treatment plant.
And we don't
That was
need to
just a
do
purely
breakfast.
coincidental phrase, by the way, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Nobody caught that, but you, I guess. Anyways.
No, some of us just chose not to comment.
Well, you're looking at baseball scores, I'm not.
Okay, just to close out, I got a couple things. I want to just review the calendar for the next couple of weeks. November 8th is the election night that we can't talk about. However,
We can encourage people to vote.
we can encourage people to vote, okay.
Especially no, never mind.
We will not be having a council meeting on November 8th. Instead, we've moved that day for that month is going to be on the 5th Tuesday, November 29th. So we'll continue to have 2 regular sessions in November as we try to each month, but it'll involve the 5th Tuesday. Thursday, November 10th is a coffee with council at Solid Grounds at 7:30 to 9:30 in the morning, and council members Cole and Valdez will be there. And then that brings us up to November 15th, which would then be our next regular meeting. So just those couple things. And then if you've looked at the river, they've turned it off.
Yep.
They have turned the water off. There is no water coming out of Chatfield. It's not coming down our river. The water that we see in the river comes from Centennial and enters it down there. And I really question whether we're at that point where we should question whether there is an ability of those in power, whether it's Denver Water or the engineers, to shut off basically our river. And I think we're there now. We've talked about the concerns that have been threatened to us for several years. The Chatfield Water Storage Project, which, as we know, South Suburban supported it initially. It was kind of one of those things where why would you not want to initially support what seemed like to be the way it was presented? And what we've learned is it's an opportunity for our river really to be shut down. And that's where we are today. So I want to know, can they do that? Is there something we should begin to move ahead with? We're there, and it's happened. So those are rhetorical questions, but I think we need to follow up.
Comment to that. I actually am involved in working with a group that, while it is not an instant solution, it is an opportunity for us to have the potential to be an influencer as the relocation or the reallocation happens. There is what is being called an environmental pool of water. And that is water that will be used specifically not for irrigation or the types of calls that we get from northern Colorado, which is when you see the river jump up, somebody down in Weld County called water most typically. But it would be an opportunity to work with communities throughout the metro area that would utilize a plant or utilize the Chatfield to call water, have own water rights that we can call that have a high enough response that to serve as for the environmental. And that is only because of the reallocation, because as you well know, water rights are just insane in Colorado. And so we don't have as much senior right in that for that water as we would like to have in order to call. And this is the best chance we have. So that's just kind of getting rolling. I'm having some meetings over the next couple of months on that. I'll keep council informed on what's going with that. It's something that may involve a larger conversation with other municipalities regarding how we can jointly support that. Think money.
And we need an interpretation from the water commissioners. There's something called recreational use. And it seems as if that whole discussion never made it into the Chatfield reallocation project of any value, but it's time for it to be discussed. That is a recreational amenity that is being shut off. And it's for, I don't know how many thousands of Coloradans. But that's something, it's Littleton's issue, and we need to begin to address it again.
Yeah. So, and I just, part of the reallocation component that the city did bring up is what the impact to the riparian and aquarian life that's along the river. It's not just the recreational piece, but at least the stress level that can occur with regard both aquarian fish and riparian beavers, et cetera, that are along the river's edge and what's happening in that regard. And if they have actually begun, which I don't think they have, the piece of beginning to build up the storage level, I'm not sure they've actually even begun that, but the level at which the river's at right now is and it's been about 5-6 weeks now, so.
And with that, unless there's further comments, we're adjourned.
Yeah, is there a couple?